Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Nightmare Narratives. I can picture some of you already in bed, maybe some of you just getting home from work. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, I'm glad you're here. If this helps you relax or sleep, please like and subscribe. It means a lot. Now let's get you comfortable, and I'll tell you tonight's story. My name is Victor Hollowbrook, and I've spent 21 years crawling through the darkest places on Earth. I'm a cave rescue specialist at Mammoth Cave National Park in Kentucky, and I've pulled 89 people out of situations that should have killed them. I know these caves better than I know my own house. Every tunnel, every drop-off, every place where the limestone gets slick with moisture, it's all mapped in my head. People think that's strange for a guy who's afraid of tight spaces. Yeah, you heard that right. I'm claustrophobic. Have been since I was 8 years old and got trapped in a coal mine shaft for 6 hours while my dad and his crew dug me out. But that's exactly why I do this job. Nobody should die alone in the dark, paralyzed by fear, waiting for help that might never come. It was September of 1989 when everything changed. We'd had 3 weeks of heavy rain, the kind that turns the underground rivers into raging torrents and opens up new passages that haven't seen light in thousands of years. The water pressure just pushes through soft limestone like it's made of soap, creating doorways into places that have been sealed off since before humans walked upright. I was in the ranger station drinking my 4th coffee of the morning when the emergency beacon started screaming. That horrible electronic wail that means someone's hit their panic button 300 feet underground. We got a group missing in the frozen Niagara section, dispatch crackled over the radio. 6 experienced spelunkers. Went down at 6 a.m., beacon activated at 10:47, no radio contact. My stomach dropped. The frozen Niagara area had flooded badly during the rains. We'd closed it to tourists, but experienced cavers could get permits. These weren't amateurs. You don't get authorization to explore flood zones unless you know what you're doing. I'm heading down, I said, all ready. I grabbing my gear. Get Tony Deepwater on backup. Tell him to bring the water rescue equipment. Tony was the only other specialist who knew those deep sections as well as I did. Native American guy, Cherokee descent who'd grown up hearing stories about the caves from his grandmother. He treated the underground with a respect that bordered on religious, always whispering something in Cherokee before we went down. I used to tease him about it. I don't tease him anymore. The entrance to the restricted section was a narrow crack in the limestone, barely wide enough to squeeze through sideways. I clipped my helmet light on, checked my backup lights, and started the descent. The air got colder immediately, that damp chill that seeps into your bones and stays there. My breath made fog clouds in the beam of my headlamp. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Caves are never truly silent. There's always something. Water dripping, bats chittering, the occasional crack of settling rock. But this was different. This was the kind of quiet that presses against your eardrums like cotton, the kind that makes you hear your own heartbeat too loud. I pushed deeper, following the route the missing group had filed with dispatch. They were supposed to be exploring a newly opened chamber that the floodwaters had revealed. The passage got tighter, forcing me to crawl on my belly through spaces barely 2 feet high. My childhood fear whispered at the edges of my mind, but I pushed it down. Someone needed help. That's all that mattered. After 40 minutes of crawling and climbing, I reached the chamber where the group should have been. My light swept across the space, a dome-shaped room about 30 feet across with a ceiling that disappeared into shadows above. Beautiful formations of flowstone covered the walls, looking like frozen waterfalls in the beam of my lamp. Then I saw their equipment. It was arranged in a perfect circle in the center of the chamber. 6 backpacks, 6 coils of rope, 6 helmets with dead lights, all placed with careful precision, like someone setting a table for dinner, but no signs of the people who'd carried them down here. Hello? My voice echoed weirdly, bouncing off the walls in ways that didn't make sense. This is Ranger Hollowbrook. Can anyone hear me? Nothing. Just that pressing, suffocating silence. I knelt down to examine the nearest backpack. It belonged to Maria Santos. I recognized her name on the tag. She was a geology professor from the University of Kentucky, 43 years old, mother of two. Her pack was bone dry, even though parts of this passage had been completely flooded 2 days ago, and there was no mud, no dirt, no sign that anyone had actually opened it. That's when I noticed the second thing. There were no bats. Mammoth Cave has 14 different species of bats. You can't go 100 feet without seeing at least a few. But this chamber was completely empty of any life except me. My hands started shaking as I clicked on my radio. "Dispatch, this is Hollowbrook. I've found the missing group's equipment, but no sign of the people. Send Tony down with full rescue team and tell them..." I paused, not sure how to explain what I was seeing. "Tell them something's wrong down here." The radio crackled with static, then went dead. I tried again. Nothing. The limestone must have been blocking the signal, even though I'd gotten clear transmission in this area before. I was on my own. I decided to search the connecting passages while waiting for backup. There were 3 tunnels leading out of the main chamber, all of them tight squeezes that forced me to move sideways. I chose the widest one, marking my path with chemical glow sticks every 20 feet so I could find my way back. The tunnel sloped downward at a steep angle, and I had to use my rope to rappel down a 15-foot drop. My light caught something at the bottom that made me freeze halfway down the descent. Scratches. Long, deep gouges in the limestone wall, running in parallel sets of 4. Like claw marks, except they were too big to be from any animal that lived in caves. Each mark was easily 6 inches long and cut deep enough into the rock to leave visible grooves. I touched one of the marks. The edges were rough, recently made. Limestone dust still clung to the grooves. Whatever made these scratches had been here very recently. "Just a bear," I whispered to myself, even though I knew that was impossible. Bears don't come this deep, and their claws don't cut limestone like butter. I kept moving, following the tunnel deeper. The temperature was dropping. I could see my breath in thick clouds now. That was wrong, too. The deeper you go in a cave system, the more stable the temperature should be. It shouldn't be getting colder. That's when I heard the sound. A wet, sliding noise like something heavy being dragged across stone. It came from somewhere ahead of me, echoing through the darkness beyond my light. "Hello? This is Ranger Hollowbrook. I'm here to help." The sliding noise stopped. The silence pressed in again, but this time it felt different. It felt like something was listening. I forced myself forward, every instinct screaming at me to turn back. The tunnel opened into another chamber, smaller than the first. My light swept across the space and I saw... Oh God. Maria Santos was hanging from the ceiling. She was wrapped in something that looked like thick spider silk, a cocoon that covered her from neck to ankles. Only her head was exposed, tilted at an angle that should have been impossible if her neck wasn't broken. But her eyes were open, and they were moving. She was alive. I rushed forward, my hands fumbling for my knife. "Maria, hang on, I'm getting you down!" Her eyes focused on me, and her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Just a faint wheeze, like she was trying to scream. But her lungs wouldn't work. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I cut into the cocoon material and immediately wished I hadn't. The substance was warm and wet, and it smelled like digestive. Acid. My knife came away covered in a clear slime that burned my fingers even through my gloves. Where the cocoon touched Maria's skin, the flesh looked raw and partially dissolved. "Jesus Christ," I breathed. "What did this to you?" That's when I noticed the others. 4 more cocoons hanging from the ceiling like terrible fruit, all of them showing signs of the same horrible process. The people inside were alive, conscious, and being slowly digested while they hung there in the dark. I grabbed my radio again, desperately trying to raise dispatch. Nothing but static. I needed help. I needed equipment. The sliding sound came again, much closer now. From the tunnel behind me, I spun around, my light stabbing into the darkness. For just a second, I saw something move, something tall and pale, with arms too long and joints that bent the wrong way. Then it was gone, melted back into the shadows beyond my light. My heart hammered in my chest. "Who's there? Show yourself!" No answer. But I could hear breathing now, a wet, rasping sound that echoed all around me. It wasn't coming from one direction. It was coming from everywhere. I looked up. There were openings in the ceiling I hadn't noticed before, dark holes leading to higher passages. And in each one I could see movement, things watching me from above, their eyes reflecting my light like cat's eyes, but wrong, too large, too aware. I ran. My training said to stay calm, to move carefully, to never panic underground. But training doesn't mean much when you're being hunted by something that shouldn't exist. I scrambled back through the tunnel, my light bouncing wildly, my breath coming in sharp gasps. Behind me, I heard the sliding sounds multiplying. They were following me, moving through passages I couldn't see, keeping pace with me effortlessly in the complete darkness. I burst back into the main chamber where I found the equipment and stopped dead. Something, had rearranged the backpacks. They were no longer in a circle. Now they formed an arrow, pointing toward the third tunnel, the one I hadn't explored yet. And standing in the entrance to that tunnel, just at the edge of my light, was Tony Deepwater. "Tony!" I gasped in relief. "Thank God you're here. We need to—" "Victor," he said quietly. His voice was strange, flat. "You need to see what's in this tunnel. There are people dying back there. We need to get a rescue team. You need to see this first." He turned and walked into the darkness. Every instinct told me not to follow, but he was my partner, my friend. So I went after him, my light barely keeping up as he moved deeper into the passage. This tunnel was different from the others. The walls were smooth, almost polished, and they were warm to the touch. I could see moisture glistening on the stone, but when I touched it, the liquid was thick, viscous, like saliva. "Tony, where are you taking me?" He didn't answer. He just kept walking, his shape getting smaller in the distance. I hurried to catch up, and that's when I realized something was wrong with the way he moved. His arms hung too long, his shoulders were too wide, and his head tilted at an angle that wasn't quite right. "Tony?" The figure ahead of me stopped. Slowly, it turned around. It wasn't Tony. It had his face, or something like his face, but stretched wrong. The mouth was too wide, full of teeth that went back too far. The eyes were white and huge, adapted for absolute darkness. And the arms ended in hands with too many fingers, each one tipped with a curved claw. The thing that looked like Tony smiled at me, and I saw its teeth were covered in fresh blood. I turned and ran, my screams echoing through passages that had never heard human voices before. I don't know how long I ran. Time loses meaning in the absolute dark, and panic makes everything blur together. I just kept moving, my light showing me tunnel after tunnel, all of them looking the same. The sliding sounds followed. Me, sometimes close enough that I could feel air displacement as something passed just behind me. Finally, I collapsed in a small chamber, my lungs burning, my legs shaking. I pressed my back against the wall and tried to think. The thing that looked like Tony, it couldn't be real. None of this could be real. Maybe I was hallucinating from bad air. Maybe there was a gas leak affecting my brain. But the blood on its teeth had looked very real. I forced myself to calm down and assess the situation. I was lost in an unmapped section of the cave system. My radio wasn't working, and something was hunting me, multiple somethings based on the sounds I'd heard. The smart thing to do was find a defensible position and wait for rescue. Tony would bring a team when I didn't report back. They'd find me eventually, if Tony was still alive. I shook that thought away and checked my supplies. 3 working lights, including my headlamp, 2 extra batteries, a knife, 50 feet of rope, some emergency flares, and a small first aid kit that felt laughably inadequate for the situation. The walls around me started to pulse. I jerked my head up, certain I was seeing things. But no. The limestone was actually moving, expanding and contracting in a slow rhythm, like breathing. And now that I was paying attention, I could feel it. A faint vibration through the rock, steady as a heartbeat. The cave was alive. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no. Caves aren't alive. It's just bad air. Oxygen deprivation. I'm hallucinating. But I wasn't. Deep down, I knew I wasn't. A sound echoed from one of the passages, not sliding this time, but clicking, like someone tapping stones together in a rhythmic pattern. The clicking came from multiple directions, responding to each other in what sounded almost like language. They were communicating, coordinating. I grabbed one of my flares and popped it, the red light flooding the chamber in a hellish glow. Maybe the brightness would keep them away. Maybe they were adapted to darkness and couldn't stand strong light. The clicking got louder, faster, almost excited. They were attracted to the light. I threw the flare down one tunnel and ran toward another, killing my headlamp to move in darkness. Behind me, I heard scraping sounds as multiple creatures converged on the burning flare. I used those precious seconds to put distance between us, feeling my way along the tunnel walls with my hands. My fingers touched something that wasn't stone. It was fabric, a shirt, and inside the shirt was a body, cold but not stiff, recently dead. I forced myself to search for identification even though every cell in my body screamed to keep moving. My fingers found a wallet in the back pocket. Thomas Chen, one of the missing spelunkers. His face in the driver's license photo was smiling, excited about his adventure underground. The photo was dated 3 months ago. I felt tears burning my eyes. These were real people. People with families, with lives, with futures that ended in this horrible darkness. And I was going to join them if I didn't figure out what was happening. The clicking started again, closer now. They'd realized the flare was a distraction. I moved faster, crawling through a section where the tunnel narrowed to barely 18 inches high. My claustrophobia surged up like a living thing, making my chest tight and my vision blur. But the fear of what was behind me was stronger than the fear of tight spaces. The tunnel opened into another chamber, and this one made me wish I'd stayed in the narrow passage. It was full of cocoons, dozens of them, hanging from the ceiling and stuck to the walls in clusters. Some were old, the material brown and dried out, the shapes inside them mummified. Others were fresh, still glistening with moisture. And some were moving, the people inside them still alive, still aware, still endlessly suffering. I recognized more of the missing spelunkers. A young couple who'd gone missing 2 months ago, a solo explorer from last year. Some of the cocoons were so old I couldn't even identify what was inside anymore. This was a feeding chamber, and it had been in use for a very long time. "Help me!" The voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through my horror like a knife. "Please help me." I looked up and saw Tony, the real Tony this time, not the thing that had mimicked him. He was wrapped in a fresh cocoon against the far wall, only his face visible. His eyes were wide with terror and pain. "Tony!" I rushed over, my knife already out. "I'm here. I'm going to get you out." "No," he gasped. "No time. They bit me, Victor. I can feel it spreading. The venom. I can't move anything below my neck." I cut into the cocoon anyway, my hands shaking. The material came away in strips, revealing his body underneath. What I saw made my stomach lurch. His skin was already starting to break down, turning red and raw where the digestive enzymes were working. He'd been in here for maybe an hour at most, and the damage was already catastrophic. "Listen," he wheezed. "My grandmother told me stories about the cave people, the ones who got lost in the dark so long ago they forgot they were human. They adapted, evolved, became something else. That's impossible. Evolution takes thousands of years. There are things down here that change people faster." His eyes rolled toward the walls, toward the pulsing stone. "The cave itself. It's old, Victor. Older than the Cherokee. Older than the first humans. And it's hungry." The clicking sounds were getting closer. I could hear movement in the tunnels leading to this chamber. They were coming. "I can't get you out," I said, my voice breaking. "The venom..." "I know." He managed a weak smile. "Take my knife. It's made of silver. My grandmother said silver cuts the changed ones. And Victor, when you get out, and you have to get out, You seal this section permanently. Flood it. Blow it up. I don't care. But nothing can ever come up from here again. I'm not leaving you. Yes, you are. His voice got stronger for a moment, that commanding tone he used during rescues. You're the only one who knows what's down here now. You have to warn people. You have to make sure this stays buried. The first creature entered the chamber. It moved on all fours, its elongated limbs propelling it across the ceiling like a spider. In the red glow of my dying flare, I could see it clearly for the first time. It had been human once, maybe decades ago, maybe centuries. But the cave had changed it, stretched it, turned it into something designed for absolute darkness and eternal hunger. More of them followed, pouring in from multiple tunnels. 8, 10, 12 of them. They surrounded me in a loose circle, their massive eyes reflecting my headlamp like mirrors. The clicking sounds came from their throats, a horrible wet noise that made my skin crawl. Tony's silver knife felt small and useless in my hand, but it was all I had. Run, Tony whispered. Run now. The largest creature dropped from the ceiling directly in front of me, cutting off my escape route. It stood upright on legs that bent backward at the knee, towering at least 7 feet tall, its mouth opened impossibly wide, showing rows of translucent teeth designed to grip and hold struggling prey. It lunged. I dove to the side, the creature's claws missing my head by inches. It moved fast, faster than anything that size should be able to move, but it was used to hunting in total darkness, tracking prey by sound and smell. My light confused it, made it hesitate for just a second. That second saved my life. I slashed with Tony's silver knife as I rolled, feeling it connect with something soft. The creature shrieked, a sound I'd never heard before, high and piercing, like fingernails on metal. Black blood sprayed from the wound, smoking where it hit the limestone. Silver. Tony's grandmother had been right about silver. The other creatures pulled back, clicking to each other in agitation. They were reassessing me, realizing I wasn't helpless prey. But they hadn't stopped hunting. They were just being more careful now. I needed to move. The tunnel behind me led deeper into the nest, but the one to my right seemed to slope upward. That was my only chance. Get to higher ground, find a passage too narrow for these things to follow. I ran, cutting down 2 more creatures that tried to block my path. The silver knife went through their flesh like paper, and they fell back screaming. But there were too many of them, and I was getting tired. My legs burned, my lungs ached, and I was running out of tunnel. The passage ahead ended in a vertical shaft, a natural chimney leading upward. I could see handholds carved into the stone, ancient markings, maybe made by Native Americans centuries ago, or maybe made by earlier victims, desperately trying to escape. I started climbing, jamming my hands and feet into the carved holds. Below me, the creatures gathered at the base of the shaft, clicking and chittering. They could climb too. I'd seen them on the ceiling, but the shaft was narrow and they were big. It would slow them down. 50 feet up, 100 feet, my muscles screaming in protest. My headlamp beam showed the shaft continuing upward into darkness. No end in sight. But behind me I could hear claws scraping on stone. They were following. The shaft suddenly widened into a small cave, barely big enough to sit up in, but flat. I pulled myself up into it and immediately saw what made this place special. The walls were covered in paintings, Native American pictographs, hundreds of years old. But not the usual hunting scenes or spiritual symbols. These showed stick figures being pulled underground, showed creatures with 2 long arms and mouths full of teeth, showed a massive cave entrance that looked like a screaming mouth, the Chero. Key had known about these things. They'd tried to warn future generations, and we hadn't listened. The first creature reached the cave, its claws scraping at the edge. I kicked it in the face, putting all my weight behind it. The thing fell backward, crashing into the creatures climbing below it. They went down in a tangle of limbs and shrieks, but more kept coming. They were relentless. I looked around desperately for another exit and saw it. A narrow crack in the back wall, barely wide enough to squeeze through. I pushed myself into it, my body scraping against stone on both sides. My claustrophobia surged up, trying to paralyze me, but I fought through it. Behind me, I could hear the creatures trying to follow, their bodies too big to fit. The crack opened into a passage filled with rushing water, an underground river swollen by the recent rains. It was flowing fast, heading upstream toward the surface. If I could survive the current, it might carry me out, or it might drown me. But drowning seemed better than being dissolved alive in a cocoon. I didn't give myself time to think. I jumped. The current grabbed me immediately, slamming me into rocks and dragging me under. I couldn't tell which way was up. My lungs burned. My head cracked against something hard and stars exploded in my vision. Then I broke the surface, gasping for air. The river carried me through total darkness, through passages I couldn't see. I just focused on keeping my head above water and not getting knocked unconscious by the rocks. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, I saw light ahead. Real light, gray and dim, but unmistakably daylight filtering down from above. The river was carrying me toward one of the cave's natural exits, a sinkhole that opened to the surface. I grabbed onto rocks as the current tried to sweep me past, pulling myself up onto a narrow ledge. My whole body shook with exhaustion and shock and cold. But I was alive. I climbed up through the sinkhole, using tree roots and rocks until I finally pulled myself out onto the forest floor. The September sun had never looked so beautiful. I lay there for a long time, just breathing clean air and staring at the sky. Then I heard voices. The rescue team, searching for me. I tried to call out, but my voice wouldn't work. They found me anyway. Wrapped me in emergency blankets, checked my vital signs, asked me questions I couldn't answer yet. The others, I finally croaked. The missing spelunkers. They're still down there. And so is Tony. We'll organize a rescue, the team leader said. You just rest. No. I grabbed his arm, holding on with what little strength I had left. No rescue. Nobody goes back down there. Ever. He looked at me like I was crazy. Maybe I was. But I'd seen what waited in those deep passages. I'd seen what happened to people who stayed too long in the dark. We need to seal the section, I said. Permanently. I don't care how you do it. Cave in, explosives, flood it with concrete. But nothing can come up from down there. Nothing. They put me on medical leave while they investigated my story. The doctor said I had severe hypothermia, multiple contusions, and early signs of nerve damage from exposure to an unknown toxin. They found traces of the paralytic venom on my skin and clothes, but they couldn't identify what it was from. The official report listed the missing spelunkers as victims of a cave-in and drowning. Tony Deepwater was given a memorial service. His body was never recovered. 3 weeks after the incident, they sealed the section. The official reason was geological instability, but I knew the real reason. Someone had listened to me. Someone had gone down just deep enough to see evidence of what I'd described. They didn't find any creatures. The things had retreated deeper, back into passages that haven't been mapped and never will be. But they found the cocoons. They found the remains of people who'd gone missing over decades. And they found something else they won't talk about, something in the deepest chamber that made even the hardened cave explorers refuse to go back. The sealed section was filled with concrete, then covered with warning signs. The area is permanently closed to all access. No exceptions. I should have felt relieved. I should have felt like I'd accomplished something by containing the threat. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd only sealed off one nest. There are 400 miles of mapped passages in Mammoth Cave and probably thousands more that we've never seen. And Mammoth Cave is just one system. There are caves all over the world, most of them unexplored. How many other places harbor things that used to be human? How many other feeding chambers are hidden in the dark? I resigned from the Park Service 2 months later. The nerve damage from the venom never healed completely. My hands shake when I get cold, and I sometimes lose feeling in my fingers. But that's not really why I quit. I quit because every time I saw the cave entrance, I could hear the clicking sounds in my memory. I could see Tony's face as he told me to run. I could smell the digestive enzymes eating away at living flesh. I still live in Kentucky, in a small house about 20 miles from the park. People think I'm crazy. They call me the cave hermit and tell stories about how I lost my mind underground. I let them talk. It's better than them knowing the truth. But I watch. I monitor reports of missing spelunkers and unauthorized cave explorations. I track unusual disappearances near known cave systems. And when I see patterns, when I see multiple people going missing in areas with extensive underground passages, I make phone calls. Anonymous tips to park services, to search and rescue teams, to anyone who might listen. Sometimes they find something. Usually they don't, because these hangs are smart and patient. They've been hunting in the dark for generations. They know how to hide, how to wait, how to choose prey that won't be missed right away. Last week I got a call from a ranger in Tennessee. They'd found equipment arranged in a circle in a newly opened passage. The owner of the equipment was missing. The ranger wanted to know if I'd consult on the search operation. I told him no. I told him to seal that section immediately, to stop looking, to accept that some people can't be saved. He argued with me, said it was his job to rescue people, that he couldn't just abandon someone who might still be alive. I understood. I really did. That used to be my job, too. But I've learned the hard way that some rescues cost more than you can afford to pay. Some darkness should never be explored, and some things that were human are better off staying buried in the deep places where light never reaches. Tony's grandmother was right about silver, but she was wrong about one thing. She used to say that the cave people had forgotten they were human. But I don't think they've forgotten. I think they remember exactly what they used to be. And that's what makes them so dangerous. Because they know how we think. They know how we'll react. They know that our instinct to help, to rescue, to never leave anyone behind, that's what makes us vulnerable. That's what draws us down into the dark where they wait. I still have Tony's silver knife. I keep it on my bedside table next to a flashlight and a map marking every major cave system within 100 miles. Just in case. Because sometimes, late at night when the wind is quiet, I hear clicking sounds in the woods behind my house, and I see footprints in the morning, prints that are almost human, but not quite. They know where I live. They know I'm the one who sealed their feeding grounds, and sooner or later, they're going to come for me. I'm not ready to die, but I'm ready to fight. And if they take me, I'll make sure I go down with a warning that someone, somewhere, might finally believe. Don't go in the cave. Don't trust the darkness. And if you see equipment arranged in a perfect circle, run. Run and never look back. Because the cave people are always hungry, and they're always patient, and they never, ever forget. My name is Samuel Ironbark, and I've been a ranger in these mountains for 21 years. I'm telling you this story because someone needs to know what really happened out there in February of '81. The official report says it was a tragic hunting accident. That's a lie. I grew up in these West Virginia hills. My daddy worked the coal mines until black lung took him when I was 15. I swore I'd never go underground like he did, so I studied biology and learned everything I could about these mountains. I wanted to understand them, to protect them. I thought I knew every secret these woods could hold. I was wrong. People around here tell stories about the Wendigo, a monster that eats human flesh and makes you crave it too. I always figured it was just old folklore, something hungry pioneers made up when they were stuck in blizzards with nothing to eat. Starvation makes people crazy. That's what I told myself. February 1981 hit us hard. The coldest winter in recorded history. Temperatures dropped to 15 below zero, and that wasn't counting the wind. The Cranberry Wilderness, that's my territory, is almost 48,000 acres of roadless forest. Once you're in there, you're alone. No roads, no phones, no help. On February 12th, I got word that 6 hunters hadn't come back. They'd gone into the wilderness 5 days earlier. Their families were worried sick. With the blizzard that had rolled in, roads were blocked solid. The backup team couldn't reach us for at least 2 days. I went alone. I found their truck at the trailhead that evening just as the sun was setting. The windows were smashed. But here's the thing, they were smashed from the inside. Glass was scattered in the snow around the truck, not inside it, like someone had punched their way out. That should have been my first warning. I strapped on my snowshoes and checked my gear. Rifle, flare gun, emergency radio, 5 days of food. I'd done winter rescues before. This was just another job. That's what I kept telling myself as I headed into those dark trees. The wind howled through the forest like something alive and angry. 4 feet of snow covered everything. My breath froze in my beard. The cold was so intense it hurt to breathe. I found their trail about a mile in. The tracks were wrong, chaotic, zigzagging through the trees instead of following the path. Some prints looked normal, boots pressed deep in the snow, but others were barefoot. Actual human feet, running through snow and weather cold enough to freeze flesh in minutes. Nobody takes their boots off in a blizzard, not unless something's very wrong with their mind. I followed those tracks deeper into the wilderness as darkness fell completely. My flashlight beam seemed weak, swallowed up by the pressing darkness between the trees. The forest was too quiet. No animal sounds, no birds, nothing but wind and my own ragged breathing. Then I smelled it. Decay, thick and sweet like meat left out for weeks, mixed with something metallic like a mouthful of copper pennies. The smell was so strong it made my eyes water. That's when I found their first campsite. The lean-to shelter was still standing, barely. Someone had built it against a rock face, but the entrance was torn apart. I walked closer, my rifle ready, and shined my light inside. I wish I hadn't. There were bones, human bones, clean-picked, white in my flashlight beam. They were arranged in patterns on the ground, circles, spirals, designs that made my head hurt to look at. Some bones had been gnawed on. I could see the tooth marks. Scattered around the shelter were the hunters' rifles, 3 of them. Each one had deep bite marks in the barrel like someone had tried to eat the metal. My radio crackled. I grabbed it fast, hoping for contact with base. Static poured out, but underneath it, I heard something else. Screaming, faint and distant, like it was coming from very far away. Then the radio went dead completely. I was alone. I should have turned back. Right then. Should have marked the location and waited for the backup team. But those were 6 men out here. Maybe some of them were still alive. I had to try. The tracks led me deeper. The snow was coming down harder now, erasing the path behind me. The temperature was dropping fast. My fingers ached inside my gloves. I found more gear scattered through the trees. A backpack torn open, food and supplies scattered and half buried. A hunting knife stuck blade first into a tree trunk 8 feet off the ground. The sleeping bags were shredded, feathers floating in the wind like strange snow. Then I heard it. A howl, long and wavering, almost human, but not quite. It echoed through the valley wrong, seeming to come from everywhere at once. The sound made my stomach clench with a fear I didn't understand. Something howled back from the other direction, then another, from a third direction. I was surrounded. I pressed against a large pine tree, my rifle raised, spinning slowly to watch all directions. My heart hammered in my chest. The wind had died suddenly, leaving the forest in eerie silence. That's when I saw it. At the edge of my flashlight beam, between 2 trees about 40 yards away, stood a figure. Tall, impossibly tall, at least 12 feet. Thin like a skeleton wrapped in gray skin. Its arms hung down past its knees, ending in long fingers with black claws. I blinked, and it was gone. Just gone. Like it had never been there. My hands shook as I swept my light across the trees. Nothing. But I could feel eyes watching me. Feel something's hunger pressing against my mind like hands around my throat. I started moving again, faster now, following the tracks because they were all I had. The cold spots got worse, patches where the air was so frozen my breath turned to ice crystals instantly. I'd walk through one and feel it burn my lungs. That's when I found him. First Hunter was hanging from a tree branch 15 feet up. His jacket was torn open and his chest God, his chest was hollowed out like someone had scooped him empty. But his eyes were still moving, still alive. Somehow still alive. His mouth worked, trying to form words. I dropped my pack and pulled out my rope, trying to figure out how to get him down. Then he spoke. "Run," he whispered. His voice was wet, bubbling. "It's so hungry, always hungry. Run while you still—" He never finished. His eyes went still, focused on something behind me. I spun around. The creature stood 10 feet away. Up close, it was worse than anything my mind could have imagined. 12 feet of walking corpse. Its skin was gray and stretched tight over bones that jutted at wrong angles. The head was like a deer skull covered in thin, dead flesh. Its eyes glowed yellow in my flashlight beam, not reflecting, but actually glowing from within. Its mouth opened, showing rows of yellowed fangs. Each tooth was the size of my thumb. The smell of rot poured off it in waves. I raised my rifle and fired. The bullet hit its center mass. I know it did. I'm a good shot, and I was close enough to count its ribs. The creature didn't even flinch. It tilted its head, studying me like I was something interesting. Then it smiled, actually smiled, pulling those torn lips back to show even more teeth. I fired again. And again. 3 shots into its chest, close enough together I could have covered them with my fist. It laughed. The sound was like bones breaking, like ice cracking on a frozen lake. Then it moved. I've never seen anything move that fast. 1 second it was 10 feet away. The next, it was past me, heading deeper into the forest. It didn't run through the deep snow, it ran on top of it, barely leaving prints, moving like gravity didn't apply to it. I stood there shaking, my rifle still raised, my mind trying to process what I'd just seen. The radio in my pack crackled to life again. This time I heard words through the static. Brother found us. So hungry. Join us." Yanked the radio out and saw the display was showing the frequency was locked on channel 16, the emergency channel. Someone was broadcasting on it, someone close. "Who is this?" I demanded. "Where are you?" Laughter answered me. Multiple voices, male and female, laughing together. "We're everywhere, Ranger. We're the hunger that walks. Join us. Eat with us. Fill the emptiness." I threw the radio into the snow and stomped on it. The voices kept talking even after the casing cracked, getting fainter but never quite stopping. I needed shelter, needed fire, needed to think. I found a small cave about 100 yards away, really just an overhang in the rock face. I built a fire at the entrance and sat with my back to the wall, rifle across my knees. The flames pushed back the darkness, but not the cold. Nothing pushed back this cold. I ate some of my emergency rations, dried meat and crackers. But even as I chewed, I felt a strange emptiness in my stomach. The food didn't help. I was still hungry. So hungry it hurt. That wasn't normal. I'd just eaten. I shouldn't be hungry. The thought scared me worse than the creature had. As I sat there, trying to plan my next move, I heard footsteps crunching in the snow. Slow, deliberate. Human footsteps. "Help me," a voice called. Male, weak. "Please, I'm so cold." One of the hunters. Had to be. I grabbed my flashlight and shined it toward the voice. A man stumbled into the light. He was barefoot, wearing only torn pants. No shirt, no jacket. His skin should have been blue with frostbite, but it looked normal. He smiled at me. "Thank God," he said. "I've been lost for days. Do you have food? I'm so hungry." "What's your name?" I asked, not lowering my rifle. "Does it matter?" His smile got wider. "Names are just sounds. Meat is real. Hunger is real." He took a step closer. "Stay back," I warned. "But I'm so hungry," he said, and hit. His voice changed, got deeper, echoing. "We're all so hungry. And you smell so good, Ranger. So warm. So alive." His jaw unhinged like a snake's, dropping open impossibly wide. His teeth, they were all fangs now, rows and rows of them. I fired. The bullet took him in the shoulder, spinning him around. Black blood sprayed across the white snow. But he didn't fall. He just turned back to me, still smiling, the wound already closing. "Iron and lead can't kill hunger," he said. "Nothing kills hunger. It just grows and grows and grows." He lunged. I rolled sideways, and he crashed into the cave wall where I'd been sitting. The impact should have broken bones. I heard the crack of stone breaking, but he just pushed off and came at me again. I threw a burning branch from my fire. It hit him in the chest, and he screamed. Finally, a real reaction. The flames spread across his skin, and he thrashed, howling, stumbling backward into the snow. Fire hurt them. I grabbed another branch, holding it like a torch, and advanced on him. He crawled away, smoking and snarling, until he disappeared into the darkness beyond my fire's light. But his voice drifted back. "More are coming, Ranger. So many more. And you're changing too. Feel it, don't you? The hunger. It's in you now, in your blood. Soon you'll be one of us." I looked down at my hands. During the fight, he'd scratched me. 3 deep cuts across my forearm, bleeding through my jacket. The wounds burned, not like a normal cut, like something was moving under my skin, spreading. I poured whiskey from my emergency kit over the wounds, gritting my teeth against the pain. Then I wrapped them tight and tried not to think about what he'd said. The hunger in my stomach was worse now, so much worse. I fed more wood into the fire and waited for dawn, my rifle ready, fighting against thoughts that weren't mine. Thoughts about how good warm flesh would taste. How satisfying it would be to bite down into something living. I dug my fingernails into my palms until they bled, using the pain to push those thoughts away. When the sun finally rose, weak and pale through the storm clouds, I made a decision. I was going to find where these things lived, and I was going to kill them all, even if I had to burn down the whole forest to do it. The tracks led me to an old mine shaft, one that hadn't been used in 60 years. The entrance was a black hole in the mountainside, about 6 feet high and just as wide. Snow had piled up around it, but the tracks went right inside, all of them. Every set of prints I'd been following, they all ended here. I stood at the entrance, looking into that darkness, and every instinct I had screamed at me to run. But those hunters deserved better than to die alone in the dark. And if I was changing, if that scratch had infected me, then I needed to end this before I became one of those things. I lit 3 flares and threw them inside. The red light pushed back the shadows, revealing a tunnel that sloped down into the earth. The walls were covered in scratches, claw marks gouged deep into solid rock. I went in. The tunnel went down for maybe 50 feet, then opened into a larger chamber. It was an old mining room, picks and equipment still scattered around from when they'd abandoned this place decades ago. But they'd left more than equipment. Bodies hung from the ceiling, dozens of them. Some fresh, some old enough to be just bones. They were all arranged in patterns, spinning slowly on ropes, creating shadows that danced across the walls. And in the center of the room, sitting around a pile of gnawed bones, were 4 of them. 4 Wendigos. 3 were like the first one I'd seen, tall, skeletal, gray-skinned. But the 4th was different. Bigger, older. Its skin was like tree bark, and its antlers, it had actual antlers growing from its skull, scraped the ceiling. They were eating something, passing pieces back and forth, taking turns. One of the hunters. I recognized his jacket. The oldest one looked up at me with those glowing yellow eyes. "Ranger," it said, its voice like wind through dead trees. "We've been waiting for you." "Let the others go," I said, my rifle aimed at the big one's head. "Whatever's left of them, let them go." "There are no others," it said. "There's only us now." 6 went into the woods. 6 answered the call. 6 embraced the hunger. "You're lying. I saw tracks." "You saw what we wanted you to see. The hunters died 3 days ago. We wore their skins to lure you here. You, Ranger, you're special. 21 years in these mountains. You know them, love them. When you change, you'll be powerful. A strong addition to our family." It stood, and I realized it was over 15 feet tall. Its head brushed the stone ceiling. "We were all like you once," it continued. Humans who thought they could survive the wilderness. But the mountains are older than your species. The hunger that lives here is older still. When you're desperate enough, cold enough, hungry enough, you take that first bite, and then you're ours forever. I won't, I said. You already have. It pointed at my bandaged arm. You feel it, don't you? The emptiness. It's not just hunger. It's a hole in your soul that nothing can fill. You'll eat and eat and eat, and it will never be enough. That's the curse. That's the gift. The other 3 Wendigos stood, circling around me. I was surrounded. How do I stop it? I asked, backing toward the tunnel entrance. The old one smiled. You can't, but you can feed it. Give in. Let the hunger take you. It's beautiful, Ranger. No more fear, no more pain. Just the hunt, forever. There's another option, I said. I'd been backing up for a reason. Behind me, near the tunnel entrance, was a stack of crates marked with warnings. Mining explosives, old but probably still good. I'd spotted them on my way in. Fire kills you, and I said, wonder what an explosion does. I fired 3 shots at the crates. The Wendigos realized what I was doing and lunged, but they were too slow. The 3rd bullet sparked against metal, ignited something, and the world turned to fire and thunder. The blast threw me backward into the tunnel. Rock rained down around me. The ceiling collapsed, tons of stone crashing down, sealing the chamber, sealing the Wendigos inside. I crawled toward the entrance, coughing, bleeding from a dozen cuts. Behind me, I heard them screaming, terrible, hungry screams that echoed up through the settling rocks. Then silence. I made it outside and collapsed in the snow. The cold air had never felt so good, but the hunger was still there, still eating at me from the inside. I looked at my hands. The skin was starting to turn gray. They found me 3 days later, half buried in snow, delirious from hypothermia. The backup team dug me out and got me to the hospital. I'd lost 3 fingers to frostbite. My left leg was infected bad enough they thought about taking it. The doctors said it was a miracle I survived. I didn't tell them about the other miracle, that I'd survived long enough for the Wendigo infection to burn itself out. The hunger had faded slowly over those 3 days. It still comes back sometimes in dreams, but I can fight it now. The official report said the 6 hunters died in the blizzard. Tragic accident. Their bodies were recovered in deteriorated condition. That was true enough. What we found in that collapsed mine wasn't fit for their families to see. I was treated as a hero for trying to save them. Got a medal, got promoted, got put behind a desk where I couldn't cause any more trouble. But I left something behind before they pulled me out of the field. A journal, hidden in a waterproof case, buried at the trailhead. Everything that really happened is in there, written in my own hand. Instructions for the ranger who comes after me. Because here's the thing, they don't know. The explosion didn't kill those Wendigos. It just trapped them. 3 months. After I got out of the hospital, there was an earthquake in the Cranberry Wilderness. Minor one, barely registered on the news. But it was centered right where that mine shaft used to be. I pulled the geological survey reports. There's a new crack in the mountainside, right where I buried them. And last week a hunter went missing in that area. They found his truck at the trailhead, windows smashed from the inside, glass scattered in the snow outside, not in. The Forest Service sealed off that whole section, called it a protected habitat area, no entry allowed. They even put up fences, posted guards. That's not to keep people out. That's to keep something in. I'm retired now, officially. Bad leg, missing fingers, post-traumatic stress. I live in town, doors locked, windows barred. I don't go into the woods anymore. Can't stand being in enclosed spaces either. The mine did that to me. But sometimes, late at night when the wind is right, I hear it. A howl, distant and hungry, echoing down from the mountains. And I know it's only a matter of time before the fences fail, before the hunger breaks free again, before some other ranger gets the call about missing hikers. I just hope whoever it is finds my journal first. Because you can't kill hunger. You can only feed it, or contain it, or run from it. And in the cranberry wilderness, there's nowhere left to run. My name is Samuel Ironbark. This is my testimony. And if you're reading this, it means you're already in danger. The hunger that walks is patient, and it's so very, very hungry. My name is Martha Blackthorne, and I've been a park ranger for 14 years. That's long enough to know that most monster sightings are just black bears standing on their hind legs, or deer moving through fog at dawn. I've got an anthropology degree gathering dust in my desk drawer, and I spend most of my time cataloging Cherokee artifacts and making sure tourists don't carve their initials into 300-year-old trees. But what happened in Cades Cove that September changed everything I thought I knew. It was 1977, and the weather had turned strange. September should have been cool in the Smokies, but instead we got this thick, soupy heat that made your shirt stick to your back by 9 in the morning. The mist rolled into the valley each day and just sat there, heavy and still, like the mountains were holding their breath. I was drinking terrible coffee from my thermos when the radio crackled to life. "Martha, you there?" It was Jim Peterson from the main office, and he sounded worried. "Go ahead, Jim. We've got a problem at the archaeological site in Cades Cove. The university team hasn't checked in for 2 days. Can you head out there?" I felt something cold move through my stomach. The dig site was 12 miles into the valley, an old Cherokee settlement that the university had been excavating for 3 months. Dr. Sarah Chen was leading the team, 4 people total, all experienced researchers. Sarah wouldn't just go silent. "On my way," I said. I loaded up my truck with supplies, my research journals, a Cherokee language dictionary I'd been studying, camping gear in case I needed to stay overnight, and my service pistol. I'd never fired it outside of training, and I hoped I wouldn't need to start now. The drive into Cades Cove takes you through some of the prettiest country in Tennessee. 6,800 acres of valley land surrounded by mountains, Taines like a natural fortress. The Cherokee lived here for thousands of years before we forced them out in the 1830s. Sometimes I wondered if the land remembered that betrayal. As I drove deeper into the valley, I noticed something wrong. There were no birds singing, no squirrels chattering in the trees. The forest was completely silent except for my truck engine, and that silence felt like a physical presence pressing against my ears. When I reached the dig site, my hands went cold on the steering wheel. The camp was destroyed. Tents were ripped apart, canvas hanging in shreds. Equipment was scattered everywhere. Brushes, screens, measuring tools thrown around like toys. The careful grid they'd laid out over the excavation was torn up, stakes pulled from the ground and snapped in half. But it was the smell that made me want to turn around and drive away. Something musky and rotten, mixed with wet earth and something else I couldn't identify. Like sulfur, maybe, or old meat left in the sun. I grabbed my radio. "Jim, the camp is destroyed. No sign of the team. I'm going to look around." Static answered me. I tried again. Nothing. The radio was dead, even though it had worked fine 10 minutes ago. I pulled my pistol and stepped out of the truck. The excavation pit was about 20 feet across, carefully dug down about 4 feet. The team had been uncovering what they thought was a communal gathering area, but now the pit looked different. The walls were scratched and gouged, like something with claws had torn at the earth. And in the center of the pit, someone had arranged bones. Not the ancient Cherokee bones they'd been excavating. Fresh bones. Deer bones, I thought, though some looked bigger. They were laid out in a pattern, a circle with lines radiating outward like a warning sign. My anthropology training kicked in. Bone arrangements like this showed up in Cherokee Fee, all chlor, markers that meant stay away or sacred ground. But these bones were fresh. Someone had put them here recently. I heard something then, a sound so deep it was almost below hearing, more of a vibration in my chest than actual noise, like a heartbeat, but huge and slow. The trees around the clearing were marked. I'd missed it at first, but now I saw them, claw marks gouged into the bark, starting about 10 feet up and dragging downward. Whatever made those marks was tall, much taller than a bear could reach standing up. I've never believed in ghosts or monsters. I've always trusted science and evidence. But standing in that destroyed camp, smelling that horrible stench, feeling that deep vibration in my bones, for the first time in my life, I was truly afraid. I found the first body at the sacred spring. The Cherokee called it Atagahi, meaning healing water. The spring bubbled up from between two rocks about 100 yards from the dig site, crystal clear and ice cold even in summer. The university team had been careful not to disturb it. Sarah Chen had respected the local Cherokee elders' warnings that some places were meant to stay untouched. But someone had been there recently. The mud around the spring was churned up, and there were tracks. I'm good at tracking. Spent 2 years working with search and rescue before I moved to cultural resources. I know bear tracks, deer tracks, wild boar. These weren't any of those. The prints were huge, maybe 18 inches long and 8 inches wide. They looked almost human, with 5 distinct toe marks, but the proportions were wrong. The toes were too long, too spread out, and there were claw marks at the end of each one, deep gouges in the soft earth. The stride length was impossible, 8 feet between prints. Whatever made these tracks was running, and it was big. I followed them around the spring and found Dr. Sarah Chen. I won't describe what I saw in detail. Even now, 25 years later, I still have nightmares. She'd been torn apart with such force that pieces of her were scattered across 20 feet. Her camera was still around her neck, somehow intact, the strap soaked with blood. I threw up in the bushes, stood there shaking, trying to make my brain work. No bear did this. I'd seen bear attacks. Bears kill to eat or to defend themselves, and the damage they do makes sense. This was something else. This was rage. This was punishment. I needed to get help. I needed to call this in, get state police out here, get a team together. But my radio was still dead and my truck was a 10-minute walk back through the woods. That's when I heard it clearly for the first time. Not just the deep vibration, but an actual sound. A growl that started low and rose higher, echoing off the mountains. It sounded like it was coming from everywhere at once. And then I saw it. Just for a second, between the trees about 50 yards away. 8 feet tall, maybe more. Covered in dark, matted fur that looked almost black in the shadows. It was standing on 2 legs like a man, but hunched forward, arms too long, hanging past its knees. I couldn't see its face clearly, just the eyes. Red, glowing red, like hot coals in the darkness. We looked at each other. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but some deeper knowledge kept me frozen. Running would trigger the chase. Running would make me prey. The creature tilted its head, studying me. Then it dropped to all fours and vanished into the forest, moving faster than anything that size should be able to move. I heard branches breaking, rocks tumbling, and then nothing. The silence came back, heavier than before. I ran to my truck. Didn't look back, didn't try to be quiet. Just ran, branches whipping my face, lungs burning. I got the door open, threw myself inside, locked it. My hands shook so bad I could barely get the key in the ignition. The engine wouldn't start. I tried again. Nothing. No, but even a click. The truck was dead, just like my radio. Through the windshield, I saw movement in the trees. Not just one shape now, several. 3, maybe 4, moving through the forest like shadows. Circling. I grabbed Sarah's camera from where I'd dropped it on the passenger seat. My hands were still shaking, but I managed to open it and pull out the film. If I died here, maybe someone would find this. Maybe it would explain what happened. The film was ruined, completely overexposed, like someone had opened the camera in bright sunlight. But it had been closed when I found it. The seals were intact. Something hit the side of the truck. The whole vehicle rocked, metal crumpling like paper. I screamed, couldn't help it. Another impact on the other side and another. They were playing with me, showing me how weak my metal shell really was. Then it stopped. I waited, breathing hard, watching the trees. Minutes passed. The sun was getting lower, shadows growing longer. My research journal was in my bag. With shaking hands, I pulled it out and started writing everything down. If these were my last hours, at least I'd leave a record. At least someone would know. That's when I remembered something Sarah had told me a month ago. We'd been having coffee in town, and she'd mentioned finding something unusual at the dig site. Graves that weren't on any of their surveys. Old graves, she said. Really old. She'd reported it to the Cherokee Nation, asking for guidance on whether to excavate or leave them alone. The Cherokee elder who came to visit had been very clear. Leave them alone. These were protected sites. Sacred ground. The dead here were special, important. They had guardians. Sarah had followed that advice. They'd marked the graves and worked around them. But the new graduate student on the team, I couldn't remember his name, he'd been frustrated by the restrictions, said they were letting superstition interfere with science. Had he done something? Disturbed the graves despite Sarah's orders? I looked back toward the dig site. The sun was almost down now, and I had a choice to make. Stay in the truck and hope help somehow found me, or go back and look at those graves. Maybe understand what was happening. Maybe find a way to make it stop. The creature's red eyes flashed in my memory. The way it had studied me, intelligent and aware. This wasn't just an animal defending territory. This was something that understood, something that judged. I made my decision. I waited until full dark, then moved through the forest as quietly as I could. The moon was nearly full, giving just enough light to see by. I'd left everything in the truck except my pistol and a flashlight. If something came at me, I wanted to be able to run. The dig site looked different at night. The bones in the pit seemed to glow in the moonlight, that warning pattern standing out stark and clear. I could feel eyes watching me from the darkness, but nothing moved. The protected graves were on the eastern edge of the site, marked with orange flags and caution tape. I counted 6 mounds, each one carefully outlined and left untouched. Except one of them had been disturbed. The earth was torn up, the flag snapped in half. Someone had dug here recently. I could see the shovel marks, the scattered dirt. And I could see bones, human bones, old and yellowed, pulled from the ground and tossed aside like trash. My stomach turned. This was desecration. This was the worst kind of disrespect. I heard voices then, human voices, coming from the trees north of the site. Hope surged through me. Maybe it was help, maybe someone had come looking for the team. I hurried toward the sound. I found them in a small clearing. The 3 remaining members of Sarah's team. David Wu, the grad student I'd been thinking about, Jennifer Morrison, the site photographer, and Tom Blackwell, their equipment manager. They'd built a fire, which seemed insane to me, a beacon saying, "Here we are, come and jeer," at us. But as I got closer, I understood. They were trying to keep something away. They'd drawn lines in the dirt around their fire, poured something that looked like salt, hung bags from the trees. "Martha!" Jennifer saw me first. She looked terrible. Clothes torn, face scratched, eyes wild with fear. "Oh, thank God, you have to help us, you have to—" A scream cut through the night, not from our group, from somewhere in the forest, far away. A human scream, full of pain and terror that went on and then stopped suddenly. "That's the 4th one," Tom said. His voice was flat, dead. "We've been hearing them all night, different directions. It's hunting all of us." "What did you do?" I asked, looking at David. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "What did you do to the graves?" "I just wanted samples," he said. "The restrictions were ridiculous. We're scientists. We need data. I waited until Sarah was in town getting supplies, and I took samples from one of the protected sites, just small ones. Bone fragments, soil samples. Nothing that would—" "You dug up sacred Cherokee remains," I said. The words came out harder than I meant them to. "You violated a burial site that was specifically marked as protected." "It's not real," David shouted. "The guardian spirit stuff is just folklore, superstition. There's no such thing as—" Something massive hit the trees at the edge of the clearing. Not just one tree, several at once, like a truck had plowed through them. Wood cracked and splintered. The ground shook. Then it stepped into the firelight. I'd only seen it for a second before between trees, in shadows. Now I saw it clearly, and my mind struggled to accept what my eyes were showing me. 9 feet tall, maybe more, covered in dark fur that was matted with mud and dried blood. Its arms were incredibly long, hanging down past its knees, ending in hands that were almost human, but with fingers too long and claws like curved knives. The legs were bent wrong, jointed in a way that looked like it could run on all fours or stand upright with equal ease. But it was the Afal. That froze my blood. Almost human. Almost. The eyes were too large, too bright, glowing that terrible red. The mouth opened to reveal teeth that belonged to something that ate meat. Lots of teeth. Too many teeth. Sharp and white. It looked at each of us in turn. When its eyes landed on David, it made a sound. Not a growl, not a roar. Something that sounded almost like words, deep and rumbling and full of rage. David ran. Stupid, panicked, the worst thing he could have done. The creature moved so fast it blurred. 1 second it was standing at the clearing's edge, the next it had David by the leg, dragging him into the darkness. His screams were horrible. They lasted maybe 10 seconds before they stopped. Jennifer was crying, making these high, keening sounds. Tom had gone pale and still, in shock. I forced myself to think. "The bones," I said. "Where are the bones you took? Where are the samples?" Tom pointed to a backpack near the fire. "David's bag, everything's in there." I grabbed it, pulled out plastic bags full of bone fragments and soil samples. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold them. The creature came back. It walked into the clearing slowly this time, deliberately. Blood dripped from its claws. It looked at me, and I felt like it could see right through me, see every thought, every fear. I held up the bags. "I'll put them back," I said. My voice came out as a whisper. "I'll return everything. I'll fix this." The creature tilted its head, watching, judging. Then it turned and looked at the disturbed grave, visible from where we stood. It made that sound again, not quite words, but close. Communication. It was trying to tell me something. 2 more shapes emerged from the forest. Smaller than the first, but still huge, maybe 7 feet tall. A female and a juvenile, I thought. A family. They stood together, the 3 of them, and I understood. This wasn't just about territory. This was about family, about ancestors, about sacred duty. The Cherokee stories talked about this. Guardians who watched over important burial sites, who punished those who disturbed the sacred dead. I'd always thought they were metaphors, teaching stories about respect. They weren't metaphors. "I'll make this right," I said again, stronger this time. "I promise. But I need help. There's a Cherokee elder in town, James Running Deer. He knows the old ways. He can help me do this properly." The creature stared at me for a long moment. Then it did something that made my blood freeze. It nodded. A small, deliberate movement. Understanding. Agreement. And then all 3 of them vanished into the forest like smoke. Jennifer was still crying. Tom was staring at where the creatures had been, his mouth open. "We need to get to town," I said. "Now. Stay close to me. Don't run. Don't make sudden moves. And whatever you do, don't touch anything else in this valley." We made it to my truck. Somehow, impossibly, the engine started on the first try. As we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. 3 pairs of red eyes watched us from the tree line, making sure we left. James Running Deer was 83 years old and didn't own a phone. I found him at his daughter's house on the edge of the Cherokee reservation, sitting on the porch smoking a pipe. When I told him what had happened, he didn't look surprised. "The Tlanua's children," he said quietly. "The great hawk's protectors. I warned that woman not to dig there. That ground is old. Before the Trail of Tears, before the white man came. Those buried there were our most honored dead. Medicine men, chiefs, the ones who kept the old knowledge alive. They killed 4 people," I said. "Maybe more." We heard screams. "They killed 4 people who violated sacred ground," James corrected. "There's a difference. You saw them, but you're alive. Why? I promised to return what was taken. He nodded slowly. That's good. That's respect. But promises aren't enough now. The Guardian's anger has been stirred. The boundaries have been broken. We need to make this right the proper way, or more will die. Tell me what to do. James stood, moving slowly but with purpose. Get me to that valley. We need to perform the restoration ceremony before dawn. The Guardians must see that we honor the old ways, that we remember who we are. We drove back as the first light touched the eastern sky. James brought tobacco, cornmeal, and other items wrapped in cloth that he wouldn't let me see. Jennifer and Tom came too. They needed to face what had happened, to be part of making it right. The valley was different in the gray, pre-dawn light. The mist was thick, but it felt less threatening now. More like the land was waiting, holding judgment. At the disturbed grave, James worked quickly but carefully. He sang in Cherokee, words I didn't understand but that felt ancient and powerful. He returned the stolen bones to their resting place with such tenderness it made my throat tight. This was his history, his people, lying in this earth. I helped cover the grave with soil, patting it down gently, carefully. Jennifer and Tom gathered stones to mark it properly. We worked in silence except for James's singing. The sun was just starting to rise when we finished. The grave looked peaceful now, properly honored. That's when they came, all three of them, walking out of the mist together. In the early light, I could see them more clearly. The fur was a deep reddish-brown, not black like I'd thought. The largest one, the male, the father, was indeed 9 feet tall, maybe more. His mate was smaller, maybe 7.5 feet, and the juvenile was perhaps 6 feet but still growing. They stopped at the edge of the clearing, watching. James spoke to them in Cherokee. I caught a few words: apology, respect, honor. He placed tobacco at the grave's edge, an offering. The creatures moved closer. Forced myself not to step back, to show respect by standing my ground. Tom and Jennifer were frozen behind me. The male guardian approached the grave. It knelt, and in that moment it looked almost human. A father mourning, checking that the honored dead were properly cared for. It touched the earth gently with one massive hand, then looked up at James. James spoke again, and this time I understood some of it. He was making a promise, that this land would be protected, that the old ways would be remembered, that no one would disturb these graves again. The guardian stood. It looked at me, and I looked back, meeting those red eyes. There was intelligence there, ancient and deep. Wisdom, judgment. Then it reached out one hand. I didn't know what to do. Slowly, carefully, I reached out too. Our hands didn't quite touch, but the gesture was clear. Agreement, understanding. A new boundary, respected by both sides. The sun broke over the mountains, golden light flooding the valley. The three guardians turned and walked into the forest, the family together. Within seconds they'd vanished, leaving only the mist behind. James put a hand on my shoulder. "You did well," he said. "Not many would have had the wisdom to listen. The guardians will watch this place now, but they won't kill without cause. The balance is restored." "What are they?" I asked. "Really?" "They are what they've always been," James said. "Protectors. Guardians of what matters. The old knowledge takes many forms. Sometimes it walks on 4 legs, sometimes 2. Sometimes it has fur and claws. But always, always it remembers what we forget. That some things are sacred. That some boundaries exist for good reason." The official report said the archaeological team died in bear attacks during an illegal excavation. The university accepted that explanation, though there were questions about why they'd been working on protected sites without proper permits. The Cherokee Nation worked with the Park Service to designate that entire section of Cades Cove as a cultural preserve. No excavation, no development. Limited human access. I kept my job, but I changed focus. I worked with James and other Cherokee elders to develop training programs for park staff about cultural sensitivity, sacred sites, and the importance of respecting indigenous knowledge, not just as folklore or history, but as living wisdom. Jennifer quit archaeology and became a documentary filmmaker. Tom moved back east, couldn't handle being in the mountains anymore. David's family received his remains with a story about a tragic accident. I never told anyone the full truth. Who would believe it? A creature out of Cherokee legend, walking around in 1977, protecting graves with violence but also with intelligence and restraint. It sounds insane even to me, and I was there. But sometimes, when I'm working alone in remote parts of the park, I feel eyes watching me. I'll find trees marked with claw signs high up, warning markers scratched into stone. Once, about 3 years after that September, I heard that deep growl echoing across a valley, and I found a deer carcass arranged in a pattern that said, "Stay away," in the old Cherokee symbol language. The guardians are still there, still watching, still protecting. I'm 53 now, coming up on retirement. I've trained younger rangers in the protocols James taught me, how to recognize sacred sites, how to show proper respect, how to work with the Cherokee Nation on preservation. Some of them think I'm overly cautious. A few have laughed about Crazy Martha and her monster stories. But some of them listen. Some of them understand that there are things in these old mountains that don't fit in neat scientific boxes, that the land has a memory, and some debts of disrespect don't get forgotten. Last week, a logging company applied for permits to clear-cut a section of forest near Cades Cove. The Cherokee Nation objected, but the company had money and lawyers. The PEs. Permits looked like they'd go through. Then the company's equipment started breaking down. Trucks wouldn't start. Chainsaws jammed. Their surveyor found claw marks on trees throughout the target area, marks that started 12 feet up and gouged downward through bark and heartwood. The company withdrew their application. I drive past that section of forest sometimes on my evening patrols. In the fading light, if you look carefully, you can sometimes see shapes moving between the trees. Large shapes, walking upright, watching the roads and the boundaries. The guardians are patient. They've been here for thousands of years. They'll be here for thousands more, long after we're gone. As long as people remember that some places are sacred, that some boundaries matter, that respect costs nothing but means everything. I sleep better knowing they're out there, knowing that the old knowledge, in whatever form it takes, still watches over what matters, the land remembers, and the guardians never forget. My name is David Millstone, and I've been a ranger at Joyce Kilmer Memorial Forest for 16 years. Before that, I taught 5th grade for 8 years. I thought teaching would be my whole life, but something about these mountains called to me. Now I get to teach kids about nature instead of fractions, and I've never looked back. It was May 1984, and the spring rains wouldn't stop. Every morning, I'd wake up to the sound of water drumming on my cabin roof. The creeks were getting higher each day, turning from their normal, gentle trickle into something angry and brown. I'd seen spring runoff before, but this year felt different, heavier somehow. I was putting together my gear for a school group visit when my supervisor called. 25 kids from Robbinsville Elementary were coming for a nature walk, rain or shine. 4th and 5th graders, ages 8 to 12, 4 parent chaperones, standard educational hike through the old growth section. Just keep them on the marked trails, my supervisor said. With all this rain, I don't want anyone near Copper Creek. Never do, I replied. I'd been giving the same safety speech for years. I packed my usual kit, first aid supplies, emergency whistle, laminated trail maps, handheld radio, added extra waterproof ponchos because of the weather. The Forest Service truck started rough in the damp morning air. Joyce Kilmer is special. We've got 3,800 acres of old-growth forest, trees that were here before Columbus sailed. Some of the poplars are over 400 years old, 20 feet around. When you walk between them, you feel small. Not in a bad way, in a way that reminds you the world is bigger than your problems. The school bus pulled into the gravel lot at 9 o'clock sharp. Kids poured out, loud and excited despite the drizzle. Mrs. Patterson, the lead teacher, looked tired already. Mr. Millstone, thank you for doing this in the rain, she said. Rain's part of nature, I smiled. Besides, the forest smells best when it's wet. I gathered the kids under the big covered sign at the trailhead, did my usual introduction, told them about Joyce Kilmer, the poet who wrote Trees, explained about old-growth forests and why we protect them, gave them the safety rules. Stay on the trail, stay with your group. Don't touch anything without asking. Are there bears? A small boy asked. Sometimes, I said, but they're more scared of you than you are of them. Are there ghosts? A girl in a yellow raincoat asked. A few kids laughed. Mrs. Patterson looked embarrassed. I've worked here 16 years, I said firmly. Never seen a ghost. Just trees, birds, and the occasional deer. That was true. I'd heard the stories, of course. Every old forest has them. Copper Creek, especially. Local folks talked about children's voices in the woods, small shapes moving between the trees. Ghost children, they said. Kids who died in a flash flood back in the 50s. I thought it was nonsense. Guilt, mostly. Parents who let their kids play near dangerous water, then needed something supernatural to blame when tragedy happened. I'd learned a long time ago that nature doesn't need ghosts to be dangerous. It's dangerous enough on its own. We started down the main trail, me in the lead, chaperones spread through the group. The path was muddy but manageable. Fog hung between the trees, making everything look soft and distant. Water dripped from every leaf. I pointed out interesting things as we walked. A pileated woodpecker hole, mushrooms growing on a fallen log, the way the forest floor was layered with different kinds of plants. The kids were good, mostly, asking questions, taking pictures with their little cameras. One boy wanted to know how old every single tree was. A girl collected interesting leaves in a plastic bag. We'd been walking maybe 20 minutes when I saw the first handprint. It was in the mud beside the trail, small, child-sized, fresh enough that rain hadn't filled it in yet. 5 fingers, clear as anything. I stopped, counted heads quickly. All 25 kids were accounted for, grouped together on the path. Everyone stay here for a second, I said. I walked back to look at the print more carefully. Definitely a handprint, small enough to be from a 6 or 7-year-old, but all our kids were older, and none of them had left the trail. Mr. Millstone? Mrs. Patterson called. Everything okay? I looked at the print again. Probably from earlier in the week, some other group. The rain could have preserved it under tree cover. All good, I called back. Just checking something. But my stomach felt tight as I returned to the group. We kept walking, going deeper into the old growth section. The trees got bigger, the forest darker. That's when I heard it. Laughter. Children's laughter, high and clear, coming from somewhere off to our left. I stopped the group. Everyone quiet for a second. 25 kids went silent, which never happens easily. We all listened. There it was again. Definitely laughter. Happy, playful sounds, like kids playing tag. Is that another group? Mrs. Patterson asked. I pulled out my radio. Base, this is Millstone. Do we have any other groups in Sector 3 today? Static. Then, negative, Millstone. You're the only scheduled activity. The laughter came again, closer now, moving through the trees parallel to our trail. Maybe it's hikers, one of the chaperones suggested. People with their own kids. Maybe, I said, but I didn't think so. The laughter had a strange quality, echoey almost, like it was bouncing off trees that weren't there. We started walking again. I kept my ears open. The laughter continued, staying with us, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind. None of the kids seemed to notice. They were too busy looking at the big trees. Then I saw the footprints. A whole line of them, leading off the main trail toward T Creek. Small footprints like the handprint I'd seen earlier. Multiple sets. At least 7 or 8 different kids from the size variation. They headed straight into an area marked with warning signs. Danger. Unstable creek bank. Stay on trail. Hold up, I told the group. I walked to where the prints left the path, looked down the slope. Through the fog and trees, I could see Copper Creek about 40 yards away. It was running high and fast, brown with runoff. The sound of it was loud, aggressive. The footprints led right down to the water's edge. My heart started beating faster. Kids down there alone would be in serious danger. The bank was muddy, unstable. The water was freezing cold and moving fast enough to sweep someone away. "Mrs. Patterson, keep everyone here," I said. "Don't let anyone follow me." I started down the slope, following the prints. They were fresh, made within the last few hours at most. I could see heel marks, toe impressions, kids running, playing. But when I got to the creek bank, the prints just stopped. Not at the water, not going into the water. Just stopped, like whoever made them had vanished into thin air. I stood there in the rain, staring at the rushing brown water. The air felt wrong, too cold, too still, despite the wind in the trees above. Then I heard a voice, clear as day, right behind me. "Don't go in the water." I spun around. Nobody there. Just trees and fog. "Hello?" I called. The forest swallowed my voice. No echo, no answer. I climbed back up to the trail quickly, my boots slipping in the mud. The school group was exactly where I'd left them, looking bored and wet. "False alarm," I said, trying to sound casual. "Just animal tracks." We continued the hike. I tried to focus on teaching, pointing out plants, explaining the ecosystem, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and every few minutes I'd hear that lay utter again, sometimes close, sometimes distant. About halfway through the loop trail, one of the girls screamed. I ran to her. She was pointing into the trees, her hand shaking. "I saw someone," she said. "A kid, right there." I looked where she pointed. Nothing but trees and fog. "What did they look like?" I asked gently. "A girl," she said. "My age, I think. She was wearing weird clothes, old-fashioned. She was staring at me." "Probably just shadows," her mother said quickly. "The fog plays tricks." But two other kids nodded. "We saw her too," a boy said. "She looked sad." I got on the radio again. "Base, I'm getting reports of someone off trail in my area. Can you send another ranger to check it out?" "Copy that. Jenkins is heading your way." We waited at a wider section of trail. The kids huddled together, suddenly quiet. Even the adults looked nervous. The forest felt different now. Watching, waiting. That's when my radio crackled to life with something that made my blood run cold. It wasn't Jenkins. It wasn't anyone from base. It was singing. Children's voices, thin and distant, coming through the static, singing an old song I half remembered from my own childhood. "Ring Around the Rosie." All the kids heard it. They stared at the radio in my hand with wide eyes. I switched channels. The singing followed. Every channel, the same eerie children's chorus. Then it stopped. Just static again. "Equipment malfunction," I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. Jenkins arrived 10 minutes later, out of breath from jogging the trail. "Check the whole area," he said. "Nobody out there. No recent tracks except yours." "That's impossible," I said. "We all heard—" "David," he cut me off. His face was serious. "I need to talk to you, privately." We walked a few yards away from the group. "It's the anniversary," Jenkins said quietly. "May 15th, 1984. 32 years exactly since the Copper Creek flood." I felt my stomach drop. I'd forgotten about that. 8 kids died, Jenkins continued, swept away when the creek flooded during a sudden storm. Those was. They were playing near the water, just like those footprints you saw. "That's just coincidence," I said. But even as I said it, I heard the laughter again, all around us now, coming from everywhere and nowhere. Jenkins heard it too. I could tell from his face. "Get these kids out of here," he said. "Now." I tried to keep everyone calm as we headed back toward the trailhead. Walk normal pace. Don't run. Running causes panic. But my mind was racing. 32 years ago, 8 children. Flash flood. I'd read about it years ago when I first started working here. A church group picnic near Copper Creek. Sudden thunderstorm. The creek rose 6 feet in less than 15 minutes. The kids never had a chance. We'd made it maybe a quarter mile when the first child appeared on the trail ahead of us. Not appeared. That's not quite right. 1 second the path was empty. Then a little boy was standing there like he'd always been there and I'd just noticed. He was maybe 8 years old, wearing shorts and a striped shirt that looked wrong, old-fashioned, like from an old photograph. He was soaking wet, water dripping from his clothes and hair. His skin was pale, too pale. He stared right at me. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. "Everyone stop," I said quietly. The school kids saw him. Several gasped. Mrs. Patterson grabbed my arm. "Mr. Millstone," she whispered. "What is that?" The boy pointed upstream, toward the source of Copper Creek. His expression was urgent, desperate. His mouth kept moving, forming words I couldn't hear. Then he flickered, like a TV with bad reception, and vanished. "We're leaving," I said firmly. "Everyone, stay together. Move quickly, but don't run." We started walking again, faster now. The kids were scared, holding hands, some crying quietly. The adults kept looking over their shoulders. More children appeared. A girl in a yellow dress. Stan. Ding between 2 trees. 2 boys holding hands, both drenched. A small girl, couldn't be more than 6, sitting on a fallen log. All of them wet. All of them too pale. All of them pointing. Upstream. They appeared and disappeared, never making a sound, always staring at us with those desperate eyes. "They're trying to tell us something," one of the 4th grade boys said. "Ghosts aren't real," another kid replied, but his voice shook. I pulled out my radio. "Base, we have a situation. I need immediate assistance on Trail 4, requesting evacuation protocol." Static. Then a voice that wasn't Base. A child's voice, young and frightened. "The water's coming. Get away from the creek. Please, get away from the creek." Then static again. "Base, do you copy?" I tried again. Nothing. The radio was dead. I looked at the sky. The rain was getting harder. I could hear the creek in the distance, and it sounded louder than before. Angrier. "Mr. Millstone," Jenkins appeared beside me, breathing hard. I checked upstream. "There's a storm system that just opened up in the high country. Weather Service says—" Thunder drowned out his words. Close thunder, the kind that rattles your chest. "Flash flood warning," Jenkins finished. "We've got maybe 20 minutes before the water hits this section." My brain went cold and clear. We were still half a mile from the parking lot, with 25 kids and 4 chaperones, on muddy trails. We'd never make it. "Higher ground," I said. "We need to get above the flood zone." "There's no time to reach the ridge," Jenkins said. "The trail switchbacks would take too long. Then we go off trail, straight up." "David, with all these kids? In this weather? You'll never—" A ghost child appeared right in front of us. A boy, maybe 10 years old. He looked at me with intense, intelligent eyes. Then he turned and ran into the forest, off the marked trail, up the slope. He stopped 20 yards away, looked back, waved for us to follow. "They know a way," I said. "You're going to follow ghosts?" Jenkins stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "They died in a flood," I said. "They don't want us to die the same way." 3 more ghost children appeared on the slope, spread out in a line, waiting, showing us a path. I made a decision. "Everyone," I called to the group, "we're going uphill. Stay together. Follow exactly where I go." "We should stay on the trail," Mrs. Patterson protested. "That's the first rule." Thunder boomed again, closer. Through the trees I saw the creek. It was visibly higher than 10 minutes ago. And I could hear something new, a roaring sound like an engine. But it wasn't an engine. It was water. A lot of water. Moving fast. "If we stay on the trail, we die," I said flatly. "Trust me." I started up the slope, following the ghost boy. The kids followed, scared but obedient. The chaperones came last, supporting the smaller children. The ghost children guided us. They appeared ahead, showing gaps between trees, pointing out stable ground, warning away from hidden roots and loose rocks. They moved through the forest like they were part of it, flickering in and out, always just ahead, always leading us higher. My legs burned. The kids were struggling, especially the smaller ones. I grabbed one girl who stumbled, pulled her forward. Jenkins carried a boy who was too tired to climb. Behind us, I heard a sound like a freight train. "Don't look back," I shouted. "Keep climbing." But I looked back. The wall of water hit the trail where we'd been standing 2 minutes ago. It wasn't like normal creek flooding. It was a solid wall, 6-7 feet high, brown and violent, full of trees and debris. It tore through the forest like a living thing, destroying everything in its path. "Faster!" I yelled. The ghost children were all around us now, 8 of them, all visible at once. They moved among the living kids, and I swear I saw them physically pushing, supporting, guiding. A small ghost girl took the handout of a crying boy and pulled him forward. The ghost boy in the striped shirt showed me a break in the dense undergrowth. We climbed. My lungs screamed. Kids were crying, slipping, but we kept moving. The water was following us up the slope. Not as fast, it was spreading out, losing power, but still dangerous, still deadly. "There," Jenkins pointed. "That ridge." One final push. The ghost children surrounded us, a protective circle, urging us forward with their silent mouths and desperate eyes. We scrambled onto a rocky ridge 30 feet above the trail, collapsed, gasping. All 25 kids, all 4 chaperones, Jenkins and me. Below us, the flood raged. It had completely swallowed the trail. Trees cracked and fell. The sound was deafening. We'd made it by less than a minute. We sat on that ridge, soaked and shaking, watching the water destroy everything below. Mrs. Patterson was crying. Several kids were too. One chaperone was praying quietly. I counted heads 3 times. Everyone was here. Everyone was alive. The ghost children stood at the edge of the ridge looking down at the flood. They were more solid now, more real than before. I could see their faces clearly, and I recognized them. There was a memorial plaque at the visitor center. I walked past it every day. It listed the names and ages of the 8 children who died in the 1952 flood. It had a photograph, black and white, grainy, of a church picnic, kids playing by the creek. These were those kids. The boy in the striped shirt, Tommy Morrison, age 8. The girl in the yellow dress, Sarah Chen, age 10. All 8 of them, exactly as they looked in that 60-year-old photograph. They'd been trying to warn us all along, the footprints, the laughter, the voices on the radio, all of it, trying to tell us the same thing. Get away from the water, because they knew. They'd been watching this forest for 32 years. They'd seen the weather patterns. They knew when conditions were right for another flood, and they'd been desperately trying to save us from their own fate. "Can you see them?" I asked Jenkins, quietly. He nodded, his face pale. "All 8. Everyone can see them," Mrs. Patterson whispered. She was staring at the ghost children with wide, scared eyes. The smallest ghost, Mary Alice Walker, age 6 according to the memorial, turned to look at us. She smiled. It was a sad smile, but genuine. Then she pointed down the ridge, away from the flood, showing us another path, a way to safety. "Thank you," I said out loud. All 8 children looked at me. Tommy, the one in the striped shirt, nodded. His mouth moved, and this time I heard it. Faint, like wind through leaves, but clear. "Be careful. Always be careful." The sun broke through the clouds. Just a single ray, cutting through the rain and fog, illuminating the ridge. In that light, the children began to fade, not vanishing, transforming. They became transparent, peaceful. The desperate urgency was gone from their faces. They looked like regular kids again, kids who'd just finished playing, ready to go home. One by one, they waved goodbye. The little girl in yellow blew us a kiss. Tommy saluted like a soldier. Then they were gone. The rain kept falling. The flood kept raging below. But the forest felt different now, lighter somehow. like something heavy had been lifted. "Mr. Millstone," one of the boys said, "were those really ghosts?" I looked at the 25 living, breathing children sitting safe on that ridge. I thought about the 8 who'd died trying to save them. "Yeah," I said, "they were really ghosts." "Are they gone forever?" a girl asked. I watched the sun rays slowly fade back into clouds. Down below, the flood was starting to recede, leaving mud and destruction in its wake. "I don't think so," I said. "I think they'll be here as long as they're needed." We waited an hour for the water to go down. When it was safe, we followed the path the children had shown us, a route that took us around the worst of the damage, eventually connecting to a maintenance road. Emergency vehicles met us there. Paramedics checked everyone. We were cold, scared, bruised, but alive. Every single one of us. The news called it a miracle. Rangers' quick thinking saves 29 from flash flood. The Weather Service said it was the worst flash flood in 40 years. The main trail we'd been on was completely destroyed. If we'd stayed on it, we would have died. But it wasn't my quick thinking. It was 8 children who'd been waiting 32 years to save someone. That was 4 months ago. I'm still a ranger at Joyce Kilmer Forest, still leading school groups through the old growth sections. But some things have changed. First, I made sure the memorial plaque was updated. It's bigger now, with proper photographs of all 8 children, their names, their ages, what happened to them. We installed it at the new trailhead, the one we built after the flood destroyed the old one. I start every tour there now. Tell the kids about the 1952 flood, about the 8 children who died. I don't tell them about the ghosts, not officially, but I make sure everyone understands. Respect the creek. When the rangers say danger, they mean it. Nature doesn't give second chances. Second, we developed a whole new flood safety education program. Weather monitoring, early warning systems, evacuation routes. The Forest Service gave me a commendation for it. They don't know I based it all on what I learned from 8 dead kids. Third, I listen now. Really listen. When the forest feels wrong, when the air gets cold, when I hear laughter that shouldn't be there, I pay attention, because they're still here. I see them sometimes. Quick glimpses. A child in old-fashioned clothes standing by the creek. Small footprints that appear and disappear. Voices on the wind. They're watching, protecting. Last week, a family was hiking near Copper Creek. Dad and 2 kids. I saw Tommy, the boy in the striped shirt, appear on the trail ahead of them. The dad didn't see him, but his daughter did. She grabbed her father's hand and pulled him back from the creek bank. 10 seconds later, a rotten tree fell exactly where they'd been standing. Would have killed all 3 of them. The girl looked right at Tommy. He smiled and waved. Then he was gone. She told her dad she saw an angel. Maybe she did. I don't call them ghosts anymore. Ghosts are supposed to be scary, trapped, angry. These kids aren't trapped. They chose to stay. They're protecting this forest and everyone in it, doing in death what they couldn't do for themselves, keeping people safe from the water. Mrs. Patterson still brings school groups here. Those 25 kids come back every spring, even though they're in high school now. They bring flowers and leave them at the memorial. They know what saved them. Sometimes late at night when I'm closing up the ranger station, I hear children playing in the forest, laughing, running, happy sounds. I smile and make sure all the trail warnings are properly posted. Jenkins asked me once if I was scared, if I wanted to transfer to another forest. I told him no. This forest is protected by 8 children who understand danger better than anyone. They died learning its lessons, and now they teach those lessons to everyone who comes here. As long as people listen, really listen, they'll be safe. Last month, on the anniversary of the flood, I hiked alone to the ridge where we survived. I brought 8 candles and lit them in the rain. Somehow they stayed burning. "Thank you," I said to the empty forest, "for giving us a chance you never got." The wind picked up. Through it I heard, so faint I might have imagined it, children's voices. "You're welcome, Mr. Millstone." The candles went out, one by one, like invisible hands were snuffing them. I wasn't scared. I smiled. Then I hiked back down, through the forest that's older than my great-great-grandparents, protected by children who will never grow old. And the creek runs clear now. The trees have recovered. Life goes on. But every ranger here knows the truth. We're not alone in these woods. We have help, silent, invisible help that shows up when we need it most. And that's fine with me. I've got 16 years of service. Maybe I'll make it 20, maybe 30. However long I'm here, I'll keep telling their story. I'll keep that memorial clean and the trails safe and the warnings clear. Because 8 children died on my watch, 32 years before I even started working here, sure. But they died in this forest, in the place I'm supposed to protect. The least I can do is make sure nobody else joins them. The least I can do is remember their names: Tommy Morrison, Sarah Chen, Bobby Taylor, Mary Alice Walker, Jennifer Martinez, David Kim, Amanda Foster, Christopher Jones. 8 children who haunt Copper Creek. 8 children who save lives. 8 heroes who happen to be ghosts. And every time I see small footprints in the mud, or hear laughter when no one's there, or feel a cold spot near the water, I say thank you. Because they're still here, still watching, still protecting. And they always will be. My name is Catherine Redwood, and I've been a ranger in Pisgah National Forest for 19 years. Before that, I was a state trooper for 8 years. I've seen car wrecks that would turn your stomach. I've handled bar fights and domestic calls and everything in between. I don't scare easy. That's what I told myself anyway, right up until August of 1968. I was 44 years old that summer, and I thought I'd seen it all. The mountains don't surprise me anymore, or so I believed. I knew every trail on Balsam Mountain Ridge like I knew the rooms of my own house. 6,200 feet up, where the air gets thin and the trees grow thick. Rhododendron bushes so dense you could hide a car in them. That's my territory. That's where I work. August came in hot that year. We hadn't seen rain in 6 weeks. The creeks were running low and the animals were getting desperate. You could see it in their behavior. Deer coming down to the campgrounds looking for water. Bears getting bold around the food lockers. It made people nervous, but it was natural. Drought does that to wildlife. The calls started coming in around the first week of the month. Farmers losing livestock, a sheep here, a calf there, throats torn out, lots of blood. The local sheriff called me up. "Cat," he said. Everyone calls me Cat. "We got a problem up on the ridge. Something's killing livestock. People are saying mountain lion." I laughed. I actually laughed at him. "There haven't been mountain lions in these mountains for 50 years, I told him. People see a house cat in the shadows and suddenly it's a cougar. I'll take a look, but it's probably just a pack of wild dogs. I drove up to the Campbell farm that afternoon. The sun was beating down hard, making the asphalt shimmer. Old man Campbell met me at his fence line, his face red and sweaty under his hat. "Lost 3 sheep this week," he said, leeing. Ding me out to his back pasture. "Something big did this, Cat. Real big." He wasn't wrong. The sheep was torn apart, but not like any dog would do it. The throat was ripped clean open, but here's the weird part. Most of the meat was still there. Whatever killed it hadn't eaten much. It was like the thing was killing just to kill. "Could be a bear," I said, crouching down to look at the tracks in the dry dirt. They get aggressive when water's scarce. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't a bear. The prints were wrong, too big, too deep. I pulled out my measuring tape, 6 inches across, deep claw marks extending 3 inches in front of each toe print. "That's a hell of a big cat," Campbell said, looking over my shoulder. I didn't answer. I was too busy trying to figure out what could make a print that size. My mind was working through the possibilities, tossing out each one. Not a bobcat. Too small. Not a mountain lion. Extinct around here. And even if one wandered through, they don't get this big. Not a bear. Wrong print entirely. "I'll set up some cameras," I told Campbell. "We'll figure out what this is." I spent the rest of that day driving between farms, looking at kill sites. 4 different properties, all within 10 miles of each other. All the same pattern. Throats torn out. Blood everywhere. Meat left behind. And those massive paw prints at every scene. By the time I got back to the ranger station, the sun was setting behind the mountains, turning the sky orange and purple. My partner, young guy named Tom Bristol, was waiting on the porch. "Heard you were looking at the livestock killings," he said. "What do you think?" "I think something big is out there," I told him. "Something I've never seen before." "Mountain lion?" I shook my head. "The prints are too big. Way too big." Tom laughed. "What, you think it's Bigfoot?" I didn't laugh back. I was thinking about, and those claw marks, 3 inches long, gouged deep into the hard summer earth. I was thinking about how much force it would take to leave marks like that. "Just keep your radio on," I told him, "and stay sharp." That night, lying in bed in my cabin, I couldn't sleep. The heat made everything sticky and uncomfortable, but that wasn't what kept me awake. I kept seeing those prints in my mind, kept doing the math. An animal that size, with claws that long, moving through these mountains. The phone rang at 3 a.m. It was the sheriff again. "Cat, we got campers missing up on the ridge. 3 college kids from Charlotte. Their tents torn to shreds, blood everywhere. You need to get up there now." I was dressed and in my truck in 5 minutes, my service revolver on my hip, my emergency kit in the back. As I drove up the mountain road in the darkness, my headlights cutting through the trees, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: fear. The campsite was at Devil's Fork, a popular spot about 2 miles up from the main road. By the time I got there, the sheriff and 3 deputies were already standing around with flashlights, looking sick. I've seen bad things in my career. This was worse. The tent was shredded, not cut, shredded like something had just ripped through the fabric with its claws. Blood was sprayed across the ground, across the trees, across everything. One of the sleeping bags was torn open, soaked red. "Where are the bodies?" I asked. "That's the thing," Sheriff Morton said, his voice shaky. "We can't find them. We found pieces, but not the bodies." I walked the perimeter of the campsite with my flashlight, following the blood trail. It led into the rhododendron thicket, then just stopped. Like whatever took them had vanished into thin air. But the tracks were there. Those same massive paw prints, only now there were more of them, lots more, and they were deeper, like the animal had been carrying something heavy. "How many?" I asked Sheriff Morton. 3 different print sizes," one of his deputies said. He was young, maybe 25, and he looked ready to throw up. "At least 3 different animals." Three giant cats working together, hunting together. We searched until sunrise, but we didn't find the bodies. What we did find made my blood run cold. About 100 yards from the campsite, up near a rocky outcrop, I found claw marks on a tree, deep gouges in the bark, running vertical. I held my flashlight up, following them with the beam, 12 feet high. "That's impossible," Morton said, standing beside me. "No cat can reach that high." "No cat we know about," I said quietly. We heard it then, all of us at the same time, a sound that rolled down from higher up the mountain, deep and loud and wrong. It wasn't a roar exactly. It was lower than that, more felt than heard. It vibrated in my chest, made my teeth ache. Every one of us froze. "What the hell was that?" the young deputy whispered. I knew what it was. Every instinct I had was screaming at me. That was a predator announcing its territory. That was a warning. "We need to leave," I said. "Right now." "We can't just leave," Morton protested. "Those kids are already dead," I cut him off. "And we will be too if we don't get off this mountain. Now." We made it back to the vehicles just as the sun was coming up over the ridge. Nobody spoke on the drive down. What was there to say? By noon, the news was everywhere. 3 college students mauled by a wild animal in Pisgah National Forest. The phone at the ranger station rang nonstop. News vans started showing up. The state wildlife department sent 2 officials up from Raleigh. They brought rifles, big ones. "We're dealing with a rogue mountain lion," the lead official told me. His name was Garrett, and he had that city confidence that comes from never actually facing down a real threat. Probably wandered up from Florida. "We'll track it, put it down, problem solved." "It's not one cat," I told him. It's at least 3, and they're bigger than any mountain lion I've ever heard of. He smiled at me like I was a hysterical woman. Ma'am, there's no such thing as a supersized mountain lion. You probably saw the tracks at different times, different angles, made them look bigger than they are. I wanted to punch him in his smug face. Instead, I said, "Fine, let's go look at them. Bring your measuring tape." We went back up to Devil's Fork that afternoon. Me, Garrett, his partner Hayes, Sheriff Morton, and 6 deputies. The campsite was still cordoned off. The blood was dry now, brown and crusty in the heat. Garrett knelt down by the clearest print, pulled out his tape measure, and went quiet. 6.5 inches, he said finally. That's not possible. Told you, I said. Hayes was looking at the claw marks on the tree, his face pale. Garrett, you need to see this. We all gathered around while Hayes pointed up at the gouges in the bark. 12 feet high, 4 parallel lines, each one cut deep into the wood. Could it have jumped? Morton suggested. From where? I gestured around us. There's nothing here to jump from. It stood on its hind legs and clawed straight up. Garrett was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "We need more men and bigger guns." That night, I sat in my cabin with all the lights on, my revolver on the table beside me. I kept thinking about those college kids. Kept wondering if they'd seen it coming. Kept wondering what it must have been like, trapped in that tent, hearing something massive rip through the fabric. The phone rang. It was Tom. "Cat, you need to come to the station. Someone just called in. Says they saw it." "Saw what?" "The cat. Says it was crossing Highway 215 just south of the ridge. Says it was the size of a small horse." I grabbed my keys and my gun and drove through the darkness to meet the witness. His name was Paul Dreyer, a truck driver passing through. He was sitting in the station parking lot in his rig, chain-smoking, his hands shaking. "Tell me what you saw," I said. "I was coming around that curve, you know, the one by the old bridge? And it was just there, in my headlights, black as midnight, eyes like yellow fire. It looked right at me, Cat, right at me. Then it just leaped, cleared the whole road in one jump, must have been 30 feet. "How big?" 8 feet long, easy, maybe more. Shoulders like a damn lion at the zoo, but bigger. And those eyes." He took a long drag on his cigarette. "Those eyes weren't natural." I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. The governor sent the National Guard 2 days later after the second attack. A family of 4 from Georgia, mom, dad, 2 kids, ages 8 and 10, had been camping at White Oak Creek, one of our most popular sites. They'd gone to bed in their RV around 9 o'clock. By midnight, they were all dead. The RV door had been ripped completely off its hinges. Not unlocked, not broken. Ripped off, the metal twisted like paper. Inside was a slaughterhouse. I was the first ranger on scene. I wish I hadn't been. The father had tried to fight back. There was a baseball bat on the floor, covered in blood, his own blood. Whatever he'd hit, it hadn't even slowed down. The mother and kids were in the back bedroom. They'd tried to hide. It hadn't mattered. I stepped outside and threw up in the bushes. I'm not ashamed to admit it. 19 years as a ranger, 8 years as a trooper, and I'd never seen anything like that. Sheriff Morton found me sitting on the RV's steps, my head in my hands. "They're closing the forest," he said quietly. "State's declaring it a public safety emergency. Everything north of Highway 215 is off limits as of tonight." "It won't matter," I said. "These things are spreading out. They're not staying in one territory anymore. They're hunting." By then, we had dozens of sightings. People reporting massive black cats on the roads, in their yard, near the hiking trails. Something was happening on Balsam Mountain, something that made no sense at all. The attacks were happening every night now, and they were getting bolder, the schools. National Guard set up a perimeter around the ridge. 20 soldiers with automatic rifles, night vision, the works. The lead officer, a captain named Brennan, called a meeting at the ranger station. "We're going to hunt these animals systematically," he told the assembled group, rangers, deputies, wildlife officials, and a few local hunters who'd volunteered. We divide the ridge into sectors. We sweep each sector, and we eliminate any large predator we find. Simple. Nothing about this was simple. I raised my hand. Captain, with respect, these things are smart. They're setting ambushes. They're coordinating attacks. This isn't going to be a simple hunt. He looked at me with that same dismissive expression Garrett had worn. Ma'am, they're animals. We have training, weapons, and numbers. We'll be fine. 3 of his men were dead by sunrise. The hunting party had split into teams of 4, each covering a different sector of the ridge. Team 3, led by a sergeant named Mills, had been tracking prints near Graveyard Ridge when the attack came. Mills survived. Barely. I visited him in the hospital 2 days later, his torso wrapped in bandages, his face white as paper. It came from above, he whispered. We were watching the trail, watching the ground, and it came from above, dropped right into the middle of us from the trees. I didn't even know cats could do that. How many? I asked. 3 of them. They moved like they were thinking together, you know? One of them took out our radio first, like it knew. Then they just killed everyone but me. One of them had me on the ground, its paw on my chest. I could feel my ribs cracking. It looked right at me, and I swear to God, Cat, it was deciding whether I was worth killing. It chose to let me live, like a message. What did it look like? Bigger than any cat has a right to be. 400 pounds, maybe more. Black, fur, yellow eyes. But the teeth, Cat, the teeth were wrong, too long, like a saber-toothed tiger or something. And the way it moved, too fast, too fluid. Nothing should move like that. After Mills, nobody wanted to volunteer for the hunting parties. The guard pulled back to defensive positions, protecting the towns and campgrounds, but refusing to go into the deep forest. Can't say I blamed them. That's when I decided to go up there myself. Tom tried to stop me. Cat, that's suicide. You've seen what these things do. Somebody has to figure out what's going on, I told him. Somebody has to track them back to wherever they're coming from. I know these mountains better than anyone. And if you find them, I checked my revolver, made sure I had extra ammunition, packed my emergency flares and my first aid kit. Then at least we'll know what we're dealing with. I went up at sunset, when the light was fading and the shadows were getting long. I parked my truck at the Graveyard Ridge trailhead and hiked in, moving quietly, watching everything. The forest was wrong. That's the only way I can describe it. The birds weren't singing. The insects weren't buzzing. Everything was quiet, like the whole mountain was holding its breath. I found the first kill site a mile in, a black bear, full-grown, torn apart. Its head was twisted completely around and its body was opened from throat to belly. The meat was untouched. Just like the livestock, just like the people. Whatever these things were, they weren't killing to eat. They were killing because they liked it. I followed the blood trail deeper into the thicket, my hand on my gun. The sun was almost gone now, the last light filtering through the trees in long orange beams. I should have turned back. I knew I should have turned back. But I kept going. That's when I heard it. That low, chest-vibrating sound. Closer now. Much closer. I froze, my hand tightening on the revolver. The sound came again from somewhere up ahead. Then another call answered it, from behind me, and another from my left. They'd surrounded me. I saw the first one step out from behind a massive oak tree about 50 yards ahead. Even in the dying light, I could see how big it was. Massive shoulders, sleek black fur, and those yellow eyes that seemed to glow from within. It moved toward me slowly, deliberately, its muscles rolling under its skin. The second one appeared to my right, then the third behind me. They were coordinating, moving together, cutting off my escape routes. I backed up against a large rock, putting something solid behind me, and raised my revolver. My hand wasn't shaking. That surprised me. Even terrified, muscle memory kicked in. I'd fired this gun 1,000 times. "Come on, then," I said out loud. My voice sounded small in the vast forest. "Let's do this." The Alpha, the one in front, tilted its head, studying me. Then it made a sound I'll never forget. Not a growl, not a roar. It was almost like laughter, low and rumbling and wrong. They were playing with me. That's when I realized they weren't going to kill me. Not yet. They were sending a message, just like they'd done with Mills. This was their mountain now. We were just prey. I fired a shot into the air, the crack echoing through the trees. All three cats scattered into the darkness, moving with impossible speed. 1 second they were there, the next they were gone, like shadows dissolving. I ran. I'm not ashamed to say it. I ran back down that trail as fast as my legs would carry me, my heart pounding, my breath coming in gasps. I could hear them following me, hear them moving through the brush on either side, herding me, pushing me toward the trailhead. They let me get to my truck. They let me drive away. But I knew, we all knew, that this wasn't over. They were just getting started. The next day I went to see old Mary Hawkins. Mary was Cherokee, 93 years old, and she knew more about these mountains than any living person. She lived in a small house just outside the forest boundary, and she'd been watching this whole thing unfold on the news. She was waiting for me on her porch when I pulled up. "I wondered when you'd come," she said. "Mary, what are these things?" She gestured for me to sit. When I did, she poured me coffee from a thermos and looked out at the mountains. "My grandmother told me stories," she said, "about the old times, before the white people came, about spirits that lived in the high places, hunters that never died, predators that couldn't be killed. She said they were the mountain's revenge for all the blood spilled here. Cherokee blood, settler blood, soldier blood. This land remembers." "So they're ghosts? Spirits?" "They're real enough to kill," Mary said. "But they're not natural, not completely. When the land gets sick, drought, fire, too much death, sometimes the old things wake up. Sometimes they come back. How do we stop them?" She looked at me with sad eyes. "You don't stop them. You survive them. You make them respect you. You prove you're strong enough to share this mountain with them." "How?" "Face the alpha. Alone. Fight it. And if you win, they'll leave. For a while anyway. Until the next time. And if I lose, then you die and they keep killing until someone else is strong enough to challenge them." I drove back to the station and called Captain Brennan. "I know how to stop them," I told him, "but I need you to trust me." That night, we set up at Devil's Fork, me alone with every spotlight and flare we could find. The plan was simple and completely insane. Draw out the alpha, challenge it directly, and either drive it off or die trying. The guard formed a perimeter a quarter-mile out, ready to evacuate me if things went wrong. But we all knew that if things went wrong, there'd be nothing left to evacuate. I sat in the middle of the clearing where those college kids had died, surrounded by spotlights pointing outward, a flare gun in one hand and my revolver in the other, waiting. The cats came at midnight. I heard them first, that low, rumbling call echoing through the trees. Then I saw the eyes, dozens of them, reflecting the spotlight beams. They'd brought the whole pack, but only one stepped into the light. The alpha was enormous, 400 pounds easy, maybe more. Its shoulders were level with my chest. Black fur rippled over muscles that looked carved from stone. When it opened its mouth, I saw teeth like knives, longer than my fingers. It walked toward me slowly, deliberately, its yellow eyes locked on mine. This was it. This was the moment that would decide everything. "Just you and me," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The alpha stopped 10 feet away. We stared at each other for a long moment. Then it charged. I fired the flare gun directly at its face. The flare exploded in a burst of brilliant red light, and the cat screamed, actually screamed, and veered away. Mary had been right. They were sensitive to bright light, to fire. I dropped the flare gun and pulled my revolver, firing 3 shots as the cat circled. 2 missed. 1 caught it in the shoulder, and it roared in pain and fury. Then it came at me again, faster than anything that size should move. I dove to the side, felt claws rake across my back, tearing through my jacket and the flesh beneath. Pain exploded through me, hot and sharp. I rolled, came up firing, emptied the revolver. The Alpha stumbled, blood streaming from multiple wounds. But it didn't go down. It stood there, bleeding, snarling, gathering itself for another charge. I grabbed another flare from my belt, struck it against the ground. It burst into brilliant white light, brighter than the spotlights. I held it up like a torch. "Come on!" I screamed at the cat. "Come on, you bastard!" The Alpha looked at me, its yellow eyes full of hate and pain, and something that might have been respect. Then it turned and limped away into the darkness. Her eyes in the trees vanished with it. I stood there, bleeding, shaking, holding that flare high until it burned out. Then I collapsed. I woke up in the hospital 3 days later. The claw wounds across my back required 97 stitches. The doctor said I was lucky. Another inch deeper and the claws would have hit my spine. Lucky. Sure. The attacks stopped after that night. The guards swept the ridge, but they found no more cats, just tracks, leading up into the highest, most remote parts of the mountain. Where they went, nobody knows. The official story was rabid mountain lions, eliminated by wildlife management. They closed Balsam Mountain Ridge indefinitely for ecological restoration. Set up cameras, motion sensors, the whole 9 yards. Sometimes those cameras catch something. A shadow moving through the trees, too big to be a bobcat, too sleek to be a bear. Yellow eyes reflecting the night vision. But by the time anyone gets up there to look, there's nothing but tracks. I took a desk job after I recovered. My back never healed right, too much nerve damage. On cold nights, the scars ache, reminding me. Sometimes I dream about those yellow eyes, about that rumbling laugh. 11 people died that August. 7 civilians, 2 hunters, 2 guard members. Could have been a lot more. Should have been more, including me. Local people still tell the story. The Beast of Balsam Mountain, they call it. Parents warn their kids to stay out of the deep forest. Hunters avoid the ridge after dark. Rangers know to carry flares, just in case. Because everyone up here knows the truth, even if they won't say it out loud. The cats are still there. Sleeping, maybe. Waiting. This is their mountain. Has been for longer than any of us have been alive. We're just guests here, and sometimes, when the land gets angry, when too much blood has been spilled, they remind us of that fact. I drive ute, pee to the ridge sometimes, on my days off. Park at the closed gate, look up at those high peaks. The forest is green again now. The drought broke in September. The streams are running. The animals are healthy. Everything looks peaceful. But I know better. I've seen what lives up there, and I know that someday, maybe not this year, maybe not for 10 years, but someday when conditions are right, those yellow eyes will open again, and someone else will have to face them. I keep my flare gun in the glove box, just in case, because that's the thing about the mountains. They always win in the end. The best you can do is survive them, respect them, and remember that we share this world with things older and stronger than ourselves. The Beast of Balsam Mountain taught me that. I won't forget. My name is Jacob Ashwood, and I've been a park ranger for 17 years. Most people think my job is about campfire safety and telling tourists where the bathrooms are. They're wrong. I'm a mountain rescue specialist in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, and I've pulled more dead bodies off these peaks than I care to remember. October 1973. That's when it happened. That's when I learned some things are worse than falling off a cliff. The harvest moon hung fat and orange over Devil's Backbone Ridge that Tuesday evening. I was finishing paperwork at the station when the call came in. A family of 5, the Mercers from Richmond, hadn't checked in after 3 days on the Devil's Backbone Trail. 72 hours is when hope starts dying. I grabbed my gear, rope, Coleman lantern, first aid kit, my old .38 revolver. The radio pack weighed 20 pounds, but up there, it was your lifeline to the outside world. No cell phones in 1973, no GPS, just you, your equipment, and the mountain. The forecast said early frost, maybe snow. Unusual for October, but the mountains make their own weather. I know Devil's Backbone better than my own backyard. 2,800 feet of ridgeline, narrow as a balance beam in places. The Cherokee used to bury their dead up there, called it the place where spirits walk. Nowadays, we just call it dangerous. 13 people have died on that trail since I started keeping count. My brother Tommy was one of them. 1962. He was 19. Went hiking with his girlfriend and never came back. They found him at the bottom of the North Ravine, neck broken. The girlfriend never found her at all. That's why I took this job. That's why I spent 11 years learning every rock, every tree, every dangerous drop on these mountains. I wanted to make sure no other family got the call my parents got. I don't believe in ghosts. I'm a practical man. Mountain rescue is about physics and weather and human stupidity. People get lost because they don't respect the wilderness. They die because they panic. Simple as that. But as I loaded my pack that night, something felt wrong. The air was too still, too quiet. Even the crickets had gone silent. I radioed the station. "This is Ashwood, heading out to Devil's Backbone. Should be back by dawn." The dispatcher, Marnie, sounded worried. "Jacob, the weather service just updated. Storm front moving in fast. Temperature's going to drop 40 degrees overnight." Then I better find them quick. I drove my Jeep as far as the logging road would take me, about 4 miles from the ridge. The last mile of that drive, my headlights caught something that made me slow down. Deer, maybe 30 of them, all running downhill, away from the ridge. Animals know things we don't. That's what my grandfather used to say. He was Cherokee, raised on the old stories. Used to tell me about the banshee that lived in these mountains, a white woman who screamed before people died. I'd laugh at him. "Banshees are Irish nonsense, Grandpa. This is Virginia." He'd just shake his head. "Spirits don't care about geography, boy." I parked at the trailhead and started hiking. My flashlight cut a weak beam through the growing fog. The temperature had already dropped 20 degrees. My breath came out in clouds. 2 hours of climbing brought me to their last known campsite. I found it just after 11 p.m. The tent was still standing. The campfire still had warm coals. I touched the coffee pot, still hot. But no people, no sounds, no signs of struggle. 5 sleeping bags laid out nice and neat. Food sitting on the camp table, half eaten, like they'd all just stood up in the middle of dinner and walked away. I called out, "Hello, park ranger, anyone here?" My voice echoed off the rocks. No answer. Then I noticed something that made my skin crawl. 5 sets of footprints leading away from camp, heading north, toward the cliff edge, walking in a perfect straight line, like soldiers marching. I followed those footprints for 30 minutes. My flashlight kept dimming, which was strange because I'd put in fresh batteries that morning. The fog got thicker. Soon I could barely see 10 feet ahead. The footprints led me to an old Cherokee stone circle. My grandfather had shown me this place when I was a kid. 5 standing stones arranged in a ring, each one carved with symbols nobody could read anymore. The Cherokee elders said it was a sacred place, a barrier. Against what? I'd asked Grandpa. Against things that shouldn't cross over. I stepped into the circle. My compass started spinning. Just spinning and spinning. The needle couldn't find north. I tapped it, shook it. Nothing helped. That's when I heard the radio crackle. Static at first, then voices. Speaking a language I didn't understand. Cherokee, maybe. Old Cherokee. The words were too fast, too frantic. They sounded scared. "Hello?" I said into the radio. "This is Ranger Ashwood. Who is this?" The voices got louder, more desperate. Then I heard dates. 1782. Massacre. The woman screams. The radio went dead. My hands were shaking. I'm not ashamed to admit it. 17 years of mountain rescue, and I'd never felt fear like that. The kind that starts in your stomach and spreads like cold water through your whole body. I kept following the footprints. They led past the stone circle toward the ridge's edge. The fog was so thick now I had to feel my way along, using the trees as guides. That's when I saw them. 5 figures walking single file. A man, a woman, 2 kids, and a teenager. The Mercer family. They were maybe 50 feet ahead, walking steadily toward the cliff. "Hey!" I shouted. "Stop! That's a cliff edge!" They didn't turn around, didn't slow down, just kept walking. I ran after them, my boots slipping on the wet leaves. "Stop, please!" But as I got closer, I could see through them, literally see through, jeech them, like they were made of fog. They shimmered in my flashlight beam, not quite solid, not quite there. I reached out to grab the father's shoulder. My hand passed right through him. He was cold, so cold, it burned. They reached the cliff edge and walked right off it. I stopped just in time, my boots sending rocks tumbling into the darkness below. I dropped to my knees and looked over the edge, my flashlight shaking. Nothing. No bodies. No screams. Just fog and darkness and the sound of wind through the rocks. But the footprints were still there, clear as day, leading right to the cliff edge, and then stopping. Not turning around. Not sliding. Just ending. Like they'd stepped off solid ground and vanished mid-step. I backed away from the edge, my heart hammering. Okay, stay calm. There's an explanation. Has to be. Maybe they never came this far. Maybe these are old footprints from someone else. Maybe the fog is playing tricks on your eyes. But I knew what I'd seen. I heard crying. A child crying. Coming from deep in the ravine below, hundreds of feet down. I called out. "Hello? Can you hear me?" The crying echoed back. But wrong. The echo should have taken 2 seconds to bounce back from that depth. This echo came back instantly, like the sound was right next to me. My watch stopped. I looked down at it. The hands had frozen at 11:47 p.m. And then I heard it. A woman's voice, singing. Old words. A lullaby, maybe. Coming from somewhere in the fog behind me. I turned, my flashlight cutting through the white. Nothing there. But the singing got closer. Louder. Then I saw her. A woman in a long dress, the kind people wore in the 1700s. She was standing on a rock about 20 feet away. Pale. So pale she almost glowed. Her hair hung long and wet, like she'd just climbed out of a river. She was pointing, down toward the ravine. "Who are you?" My voice came out of, so whisper. She opened her mouth and screamed. Not a normal scream. This was something else. Something that went straight into your brain and turned everything inside you to ice. The sound made my nose start bleeding. Made my ears feel like they were being stabbed with needles. I fell to my knees, dropping my flashlight. It rolled toward the cliff edge and tumbled over, the light disappearing into darkness. When I looked up, she was gone. But I could still hear her screaming. Somewhere in the fog. Getting closer. I don't know how long I sat there in the dark. Could have been minutes. Could have been hours. Time felt broken, like my watch. When I finally stood up, my legs were shaking. My ears were ringing from that scream. I touched my nose. Blood, lots of it, already drying on my face. I fumbled for my backup flashlight. The beam was weak, barely cutting through the fog. I had to get off this ridge. Had to get back to the Jeep, radio for help, tell them. Tell them what? That I saw ghosts? That a woman in an old dress screamed at me? They'd pull me off the mountain. Make me take a psych evaluation. End my career. But those footprints were real. That campsite was real. A family of 5 was missing, and I'd seen them walk off a cliff. I made my way back to the Cherokee Stone Circle. Something about those stones felt safer, like they were a shield against whatever was out there in the fog. That's when I found the first body. Mr. Mercer, the father. He was lying just outside the stone circle, face down. I rolled him over and checked for a pulse. Nothing. He was cold, stiff, dead for at least a few hours. But here's what made my blood run cold. There wasn't a mark on him, no injuries, no broken bones, no sign of how he died. He just looked empty, like something had sucked the life right out of him. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. And in his pupils, if I looked close, I could see the reflection of something. A woman's face, screaming. I backed away fast, nearly tripping over my own feet. The fog shifted. I saw more shapes, 2 small bodies near the G of the stone circle. The children. A boy and a girl, maybe 8 and 10 years old. Same thing, no injuries, just dead, eyes open. That same reflection in their pupils. No. I was talking to myself, trying to stay calm. This isn't real. This can't be real. But it was real. 3 dead. That left the mother and the teenage son somewhere out there in the fog. My radio crackled to life. Not voices this time. Just that scream. That horrible brain-piercing scream coming through the speaker. I ripped the radio off my belt and threw it away. It kept screaming even as it hit the ground, the sound echoing off the rocks. A tree branch snapped behind me. I spun around. She was there again. The pale woman. Closer this time. Maybe 10 feet away. I could see her better now. Her dress was rotted and torn. Her skin was gray-white like a corpse. Her eyes... God, her eyes were completely white. No pupils. Just white. And she was looking right at me. "What do you want?" My voice cracked. She pointed past me, toward the ravine. Then she opened her mouth. I ran. Didn't wait for the scream. Just turned and ran, branches whipping my face, my boots sliding on wet leaves. I could hear her behind me, not footsteps. Something else. Like wind. Like she was floating. I crashed through the undergrowth, not caring about the trail anymore, just trying to get away. My weak flashlight beam bounced wildly. I saw rocks, trees, fog, rocks, trees. And then I saw him. The teenage son, David Mercer. 16 years old, according to the missing persons report. He was standing near a small cave entrance pressed against the rock wall. Alive, terrified, staring at something in the darkness behind me. "Run!" I shouted at him. "Get inside the cave!" But he couldn't move. He was frozen in fear, his whole body shaking. I grabbed him and shoved him into the cave. We scrambled back into the darkness, my flashlight dimming even more. The cave was small, barely big enough for both of us. "She killed them," David whispered. "She killed my whole family. She made them walk off the cliff. I hid, but she found me. She's been hunting me for hours." "Who is she?" "I don't know. She just appeared at our campsite, started singing, and everyone just stood up and followed her. I ran. I'm the only one who ran." We pressed ourselves against the back of the cave. I could hear something outside, that singing again, getting closer. Then she appeared at the cave entrance. 7 feet tall now, not 5 feet like before. 7 feet, growing bigger. Her white eyes filled the whole cave with pale light. She reached one arm inside. Her fingers were too long, too thin, like spider legs. They stretched toward us, getting longer and longer, defying physics, defying reality. I pulled out my .38. "Stay back." She smiled. Her teeth were black. I fired. 3 shots, point blank. The bullets passed right through her. Hit the cave wall behind where she stood. She didn't even flinch. Her hand wrapped around my throat. She was solid now, cold, freezing cold. She lifted me off my feet like I weighed nothing. 100 souls, she whispered. Her voice was like breaking glass. 97 collected. 3 more to go. 3 more to free them. 3 more to end this. She was crushing my windpipe. Black spots appeared in my vision. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Then David screamed. "Leave him alone!" He threw a rock at her, a rock from the cave floor. The rock had Cherokee symbols carved into it. When it hit her, she shrieked and dropped me. I fell hard, gasping for air. She retreated from the cave entrance, holding her arm where the rock had touched her. Smoke was rising from her skin. "The stones," I choked out. "She can't cross the sacred stones." We stayed in that cave for an hour, maybe more. My watch was still frozen at 11:47. David huddled in the corner, crying quietly. I sat near the entrance, my throat bruised and aching, trying to figure out what to do. A pale woman stayed outside. I could see her shadow in the fog, circling the cave like a wolf. She couldn't come in, not with that blessed stone David had thrown. But she could wait. My grandfather told me stories, I said, my voice raspy, about a woman who died here, long time ago, 1782, during a Cherokee raid. Her name was Mary Whitmore. She got separated from her family, lost in these mountains. They never found her body. What happened to her? David asked. The Cherokee warriors found her first. Or maybe something else did. The stories get confused. But she died up here, and her spirit never left. I looked at the shadow outside. I think she made some kind of deal with whatever lives in this mountain. The Cherokee spirits, the old ones. What kind of deal? 100 souls. She collects 100 souls and they'll let her go. Let her pass on. That's what she said. 97 collected, 3 more to go. David's face went white. My family. We were going to be the last ones? No. I stood up, my legs still shaky. She wants me too. You're number 98, I'm 99. There's still one more hiker group coming up this trail tomorrow. They'll be number 100. We had to stop her. But how do you stop a ghost? A thing that can't be shot, can't be fought, can't even be touched except with blessed Cherokee stones. I thought about what my grandfather had taught me, about the stone circle, about the barrier. The stones aren't just protecting us, I said slowly. They're binding her, keeping her connected to this place. That's why she can't cross them. She's tied to the mountain through those stones. So if we destroy the stones, maybe we break the binding. Maybe we free all those spirits at once, the Cherokee ones and her. Or maybe we make it worse, David said. Maybe. But I was out of options. Dawn was coming. The new hiking group was about. We'll be here by noon. If we didn't do something, that woman would have her 100 souls. And then what? Would she keep going? Would she be free to haunt the whole mountain instead of just this ridge? I had dynamite in my rescue pack. We keep it for emergency avalanche control. 3 sticks, enough to blow up a small rock formation, enough to destroy 5 Cherokee standing stones. Stay here, I told David. Don't leave this cave until you hear the explosion. Then run. Get down to the trail, get to my Jeep, and drive straight to the ranger station. Tell them everything. I don't care if they believe you. Just tell them to close this trail. What about you? I'm going to give her what she wants. I stepped out of the cave before David could stop me. The pale woman was waiting. She'd grown even bigger, 8 feet tall now. Her white eyes burned in the darkness. You want me? I called out. Come and get me. I ran, back toward the stone circle. She followed. I could hear her behind me. That horrible singing getting louder, closer. She was fast, faster than any living thing. I reached the stone circle with seconds to spare, pulled out the dynamite, started wiring it to the stones, my hands shaking so badly I could barely work. She appeared at the edge of the circle, standing right at the barrier, so close I could see the rot on her skin, smell the death on her breath. Jacob Ashwood, she whispered. I know you. I took your brother, Tommy. He was a sweet boy, number 73. My hands froze on the wire. He called for you, she said. At the end, called your name, but you didn't come. You were too late. Shut up. I can show you. I can show you what he saw, what they all see. She smiled. Would you like that? Would you like to see your brother again? For a moment, God help me. For a moment, I wanted to say yes. Wanted to cross that barrier, let her take me, just to see Tommy one more time. Then I remembered David, remembered the Mercer family, remembered 13 other families over the past 11 years. No, I said. I'm done with you. I lit the sartis, fuse. 30 seconds. She screamed, that brain-piercing scream. I fell to my knees, blood pouring from my nose again, my ears exploding with pain. She reached across the barrier. The Cherokee stones started cracking, splitting. Her power was too strong. She was breaking through. 20 seconds. She stepped into the circle, the first time she'd crossed it. Her hand reached for me. 10 seconds. I closed my eyes. Thought about Tommy, about my grandfather, about doing one good thing to make up for being too late 17 years ago. 5 seconds. I'm sorry I couldn't save you, Tommy. The dynamite exploded. The blast was massive. I felt myself lifted off the ground, thrown backward. Rocks and dirt rained down. My ears were already damaged from her screaming, but the explosion finished the job. Everything went silent. Perfectly, completely silent. I couldn't hear anything at all. I opened my eyes. The stone circle was gone. Just a crater where it used to be. Smoke and dust filled the air. And the pale woman, she was screaming. I couldn't hear it, but I could see her mouth open wide, her whole body shaking. She was coming apart, dissolving, turning into mist. But she wasn't alone. Other figures appeared around her. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Transparent shapes rising from the ground, from the rocks, from the very mountain itself. The Cherokee spirits, the bound souls, all of them being released at once. They surrounded her, and they pulled her down, into the ground, into whatever lay beneath. She reached for me one last time. Our eyes met, and in that moment I saw everything she'd seen, everyone she'd taken, including Tommy, my brother, standing among the spirits, watching. He looked peaceful. Then they were gone. All of them. The spirits, the woman, everything. Just gone. I lay there in the dirt until dawn. Couldn't move. Could barely breathe. My ears were ruined. I'd never hear right again. My body felt like it had been broken and put back together wrong, but I was alive. David found me at sunrise. He'd run down and radioed for help like I told him. They sent up a whole team, helicopters, paramedics, the works. We found the bodies, all 4 Mercers. They pulled them out of the ravine, plus 2 more hikers from a month ago that nobody knew were missing. 6 people dead total. The official report said it was a tragic hiking accident during a freak storm. Mass hysteria causing people to walk off cliffs. It happens sometimes. People get disoriented in fog, lose their sense of direction. Nobody asked about the exploded stone circle. Nobody asked why I had dynamite. Nobody asked about my statement that I'd seen a woman in an old dress. They transferred me to a desk job, said I was too traumatized for mountain rescue. They were right. I couldn't go back up there, couldn't face those trails again. But the transfer wasn't punishment. It was mercy. Because even though I can't hear anymore, everything is muffled like I'm underwater, I still hear things I shouldn't. On quiet nights, when the wind blows just right, I hear Cherokee voices, whispers. Sometimes I hear Tommy calling my name. I put up warning signs around Devil's Backbone Ridge. Dangerous cliff areas. Stay on marked trails. Nobody questioned it. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. 2 months after the incident, I drove back up to that ridge, just to see, just to make sure. The stone circle was rebuilt. 5 new Cherokee standing stones, arranged in a perfect ring. Fresh symbols carved into them. Nobody from the Park Service did it. Nobody from the Cherokee Nation claimed responsibility. The stones just appeared. Overnight. And the trail? It's safe now. No accidents, no disappearances. People hike Devil's Backbone every day, and they all come home. Because the spirits aren't angry anymore. They're not bound. They're protecting the ridge now, protecting people from whatever else might be out there in those mountains. I'm 57 years old now, retire. I live in a cabin at the base of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Can't hear much of anything except muffled sounds and ringing. But sometimes on October nights when the harvest moon is full, I stand on my porch and look up at Devil's Backbone Ridge, and I swear I can hear singing. Cherokee lullabies, my grandfather's voice, Tommy's laugh. The mountain remembers, and so do I. My name is Jacob Ashwood. I was a park ranger for 17 years, and I'm telling you this story so you understand. If you're hiking in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and you see stones arranged in a circle, and you hear singing in the fog, turn around. Some barriers exist for a reason. My name is Robert Ashford, and I've been a ranger with the Forest Service for 20 years now. I'm 48 years old, and I thought I'd seen everything these mountains could throw at me. Turns out I was wrong. It was November 1975, right in the middle of hunting season. The Massanutten Mountain Ridge where I worked stretched 7 miles through some of the densest hardwood forest in Virginia. I knew every trail, every limestone cave, every hidden hollow. This was my forest. I'd spent 2 tours in Vietnam before coming home to these mountains. The war taught me to stay calm when things got bad, and working with fire taught me to respect what I couldn't control. My job was managing controlled burns, setting small fires on purpose to prevent big ones. It sounds crazy, but it works. Fire is just another tool if you know how to use it. That November morning started cold. The sky was gray and heavy, sitting on top of the trees like a wet blanket. Temperature was around 35 degrees, and I could see my breath making little clouds in the air. Snow was coming. I could smell it. I was loading my truck when Tom Bradley from the hunting camp called on the radio. Tom was a local guy, hunted these woods since he was a kid. He didn't scare easy. "Rob, you need to get up here." His voice crackled through the speaker. "What's the problem?" "Just come up here, please." 20 minutes later, I pulled into the camp. 5 hunters stood in a circle staring at something on the ground. They all looked pale, like they'd seen a ghost. "Morning, fellas," I said, walking over. "What's going on?" Tom pointed down without saying a word. Someone had built stick figures all around their camp. Not little ones like kids make. These were big, maybe 4 feet tall, made from thick branches twisted together. They formed a perfect circle around the tents, 12 of them standing like silent guards. "Kids playing pranks?" I asked, but I already knew that wasn't right. We were 7 miles from the nearest road. "Rob," Tom said quietly, "we were all in our tents last night, all of us. We would have heard someone doing this." I walked around the circle, looking at each figure. The construction was weird. The sticks weren't tied or nailed together. They were just stuck together somehow, like the wood had grown that way. "Probably just some locals trying to scare you city boys," I said, forcing a smile. "You know these mountains have all kinds of old stories. Stick Indians, forest spirits, all that stuff. Just tales to scare children." "These don't look like tales," one of the younger hunters said. I kicked one of the figures over. The sticks clattered apart on the frozen ground. "See? Just sticks. Nothing to worry about." But as I drove away, I kept thinking about those figures, about how quiet Tom had been, about the way the sticks fit together without any rope or wire. That afternoon, I was checking fire breaks on the north side of the ridge when I found more of them. These ones were bigger, maybe 6 feet tall, and they weren't in a circle. They were lined up in a row, all pointing the same direction, pointing deeper into the forest. I called my fire crew on the radio. "Hey, any of you guys been out on the North Ridge today?" "Negative," came the reply. "We're all working the south side." "Anyone reported seeing hikers or kids out here?" "Nothing. Weather's keeping everyone away." "Why?" I looked at the line of stick figures standing there in the gray light. "No reason. Check in with me in 4 hours." The snow started falling as the sun went down. I should have driven back to the ranger station, but something made me stay. Maybe it was my training from the war. When something felt wrong, you didn't ignore it. You investigated. I made camp near the fire break, ate some cold rations, and waited. Around midnight, I heard it. Snap, snap, snap. The sound of branches breaking, coming from the darkness beyond my campfire. I grabbed my flashlight and pointed it toward the noise. The beam cut through the falling snow, showing nothing but trees and shadows. Snap, snap. The sound moved to my left. I spun the light. Still nothing. Then I saw it, just for a second, at the very edge of my light. A shape made of sticks, as tall as a man, moving between the trees. Not walking like a person walks, moving like something that shouldn't be able to move at all. I rubbed my eyes. The shape was gone. You're tired, I told myself. Just tired and seeing things. But when morning came and I packed up my camp, there were 3 new stick figures standing 20 feet away, and they hadn't been there when I went to sleep. The next morning I found the first body. His name was Carl Henderson, one of the hunters from Tom's group. He'd gone out alone before dawn to check his deer stands. Tom called it in around 8 a.m. when Carl didn't come back for breakfast. I found him 2 hours later, about a mile from camp. He was hanging 8 feet off the ground, impaled on sharpened branches that grew straight out from an old oak tree. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that someone, or something, had arranged him like a scarecrow. His arms were spread wide, held in place by smaller branches that had been pushed through his sleeves, his head tilted to one side, and all around the base of the tree, in a perfect circle, were stick figures. Watching. I threw up in the bushes. 2 tours in Vietnam, and this made me throw up. Tom and his guys packed up and left within an hour. I didn't blame them. I called the sheriff's office, and they sent deputies and an ambulance. By the time we got Carl down, the sun was setting again. "Animal attack?" one of the deputies asked. I looked at those sharpened branches, at the way they'd been positioned just right to hold a man's weight. "No animal did this." "Then what?" I didn't have an answer. The sheriff's office closed down the North Ridge to hunting. I spent the next 3 days checking every trail, every campsite, looking for whoever had killed Carl. I carried my old military sidearm now, loaded and ready. That's when I started noticing the patterns. The stick figures were multiplying. Every morning, there were more of them. They showed up along trails, near the fire breaks, around my ranger station. Some were small, others towered over me at 12 feet tall, and they were always pointing, showing directions like signs on a highway. I followed their directions one afternoon, just to see where they led. The path took me to a part of the forest I'd never paid much attention to before. A small valley between 2 ridges, thick with old trees and surrounded by limestone cliffs. In the center of the valley was a clearing, and in the clearing were rocks arranged in a circle. Old rocks, covered in moss and settled deep into the earth. This wasn't a natural formation. Someone had put them there a long time ago. I was standing there, trying to figure out what I was looking at, when I heard it behind me. Snap, snap, snap. I turned around slowly. 3 stick figures stood at the edge of the clearing. As I watched, they began to move, not falling apart and blowing in the wind, actually moving. Their stick arms bent, their stick legs stepped forward. They walked toward me like men walk, but wrong somehow. Wrong in a way that made my brain scream that this wasn't possible. I pulled my gun. "Stop right there!" They kept coming. I fired twice. The bullets went straight through the middle figure, punching holes in its stick body. It didn't even slow down. I ran. Branches whipped my face as I crashed through the forest. Behind me, I could hear them coming. Not footsteps. Something else. The sound of wood scraping against wood, of branches bending and flexing. And there were more than 3 now. The forest was full of them, moving through the trees on all sides. I made it back to my truck and locked the doors. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get at the key in the ignition. Through the windshield, I could see them emerging from the tree line. Dozens of stick figures standing motionless now, watching me drive away. That night, I sat in my office at the ranger station and tried to make sense of it. I pulled out every book we had on local history and folklore. Most of it was nonsense, ghost stories and legends that people told around campfires. But then I found something in an old journal from the 1890s. A forestry surveyor had written about the Massanutten tribes, Native Americans who'd lived in these mountains hundreds of years ago. He mentioned sacred sites where they held ceremonies, places where they believed the spirit world touched the living world, places they guarded with wooden sentinels, stick Indians. That's what the old stories called them. Guardian spirits made from the forest itself, protecting places humans weren't supposed to go. I'd laughed at those stories my whole life, called them old wives' tales. I wasn't laughing anymore. The phone rang, making me jump. It was Tom Bradley. "Rob, you need to know something. 2 more of my guys are missing, Mike and Steve. They went back up there this afternoon to get some gear we left behind. They never came back." "I'm calling the sheriff." "We already did. Deputies found their truck on the service road, doors wide open, keys still in the ignition. But no sign of them, just..." He paused. "Just more of those stick things. Hundreds of them, Rob. Hundreds." After I hung up, I sat in the dark office and tried to think. Carl was dead. Mike and Steve were missing, and the stick figures were spreading. Whatever was happening in my forest, it was getting worse. The search and rescue team arrived the next morning. 25 people, including sheriff's deputies, volunteers, and 2 tracking dogs. I led them to the area where Tom's hunters had last been seen. We foot, and Mike first. He was in a shallow ravine, his body bent backward over a fallen log, arranged with his arms outstretched. Stick figures surrounded him in 3 concentric circles like he was the center of some terrible ceremony. One of the volunteers, a young woman named Sarah, started crying. "Why would someone do this?" "Everyone stay together," the sheriff ordered. "Nobody goes anywhere alone." We found Steve an hour later. He'd made it almost a quarter mile before they caught him. The stick figures had herded him up against a cliff face. There was nowhere left to run. The dogs wouldn't go near either body. They pulled against their leashes, whining and trying to go back the way we came. Animals know when something's wrong in a way humans don't. "We're shutting down the whole mountain," the sheriff told me. "Nobody comes up here until we catch whoever's doing this." "You think it's a person?" I asked quietly. He gave me a hard look. What else would it be? I could have told him about seeing them move, about shooting one and watching the bullet pass straight through, but I'd sound crazy. Hell, I felt crazy. That night I stayed at the ranger station instead of going home. I couldn't leave. This was my forest, my responsibility. Whatever was happening here, I needed to understand it. Around 2 a.m, I heard something outside. I grabbed my flashlight and went to the window. The entire clearing in front of the station was filled with stick figures. There must have been 200 of them, standing perfectly still in the moonlight. As I watched, they began to move, not walking, but rearranging themselves. They formed shapes, patterns, letters. Go. That's what they spelled out. Go. Then they fell apart, collapsing back into random piles of sticks. My radio crackled to life. "Rob, you there?" It was Danny, one of my fire crew, calling from the South Station 15 miles away. "I'm here." "Man, you're not going to believe this. We've got those stick things down here now. They're everywhere. They showed up in the last hour, just appeared. What the hell is going on?" They were spreading, moving beyond the sacred site, beyond the North Ridge, taking over the whole forest. I spent the rest of the night reading everything I could find about the Massanutten tribes. There wasn't much. They'd been gone for over 100 years, their culture destroyed by disease and displacement. But one thing kept coming up in the old records. They believed the forest was alive. Not just the trees and animals, but something deeper. A spirit that protected the land. And they believed you had to show respect to that spirit, or it would destroy you. At dawn, I drove back to that clearing with the stone circle. I needed to see it again, to understand what I was dealing with. The stick figures were waiting for me. They lined the path, hundreds of them, all pointing the same direction, leading me forward like guards escorting a prisoner. I walked between them, my hand on my gun, even though I knew it was useless. When I reached the clearing, I understood. The stone circle wasn't just some old campsite or meeting place. It was a threshold. a doorway between worlds. And modern people like me, like those hunters, we'd been treating it like it was nothing. Walking across it, camping on it, disturbing it without a second thought. No wonder the spirits were angry. As I stood there, the stick figures began to close in around me, not attacking, just surrounding me, trapping me in the center of the circle. They grew taller, reaching up toward the gray sky. The sound of creaking wood filled the air so loud it made my teeth hurt. Then one of them, the biggest one, maybe 15 feet tall, bent down until what should have been its face was level with mine. I couldn't breathe. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might burst. The figure reached out one wooden arm and touched my chest right over my heart. The wood was cold, colder than anything I'd ever felt. It was like being touched by winter itself. Images flooded my mind. I saw the valley as it had been hundreds of years ago, full of people who honored the forest. I saw the stone circle during ceremonies, fires burning, voices singing. I saw what this place meant, how sacred it was, how important. And I saw what we'd done to it. The logging, the hunting camps, the careless feet trampling ground that should have been protected. I felt the forest's anger like it was my own. When the figure pulled its arm back, I collapsed to my knees, gasping. The message was clear. Leave this place alone. Protect it, or everyone dies. I drove straight to the county library when it opened at 9. My hands were still shaking, but I needed information. Real information, not just old journals and legends. Mrs. Chen, the librarian, found me in the local history section 2 hours later, surrounded by books and papers. Robert, you look terrible. I need to find someone who knows about Native American sacred sites, the Massanutten tribe specifically. She thought for a moment. There's a professor at the university, Dr. Sarah Whitehorse. She's Monacan and she studies indigenous history. Want me to call her? Dr. Whitehorse met me at a diner in town that afternoon. She was in her 50s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through me. I told her everything. The stick figures, the deaths, the stone circle. I expected her to call me crazy. Instead, she nodded slowly. The stick Indians. My grandmother told me about them when I was young. Most people think they're just stories, but she looked at me seriously. What if the stories are memories? What if our ancestors knew something we've forgotten? How do I stop them? I asked. People are dying. You don't stop them. You can't fight spirits of the forest, but you can make peace with them. She pulled a small leaf, her pouch, from her bag. This is tobacco, sacred tobacco. If you offer it with the right intentions, with real respect, they might listen. That's it? Just tobacco? Not just tobacco. You have to mean it. You have to truly respect what that place is and promise to protect it. Can you do that? I thought about Carl, about Mike and Steve, about the way that stick figure had shown me what this place meant. Yes, I can do that. Then go at sunset, she said. That's when the worlds are closest. The sun was already low when I drove back up the mountain. I'd called the sheriff and told him to keep everyone away from the North Ridge. Told him I had a lead and needed to check it out alone. He wasn't happy, but he agreed to give me until morning. The stick figures were everywhere now. They covered the hillsides like a wooden army, all facing the sacred clearing, waiting. I parked my truck and walked the last quarter mile on foot. The forest was completely silent. No birds, no wind, nothing. Just the sound of my boots on frozen ground and my own ragged breathing. When I reached the clearing, the sun was touching the horizon, painting everything red and gold. I walked to the center of the stone circle and knelt down. My knees cracked and I realized how scared I was. But I'd made a promise to Dr. Whitehorse, and more importantly, to myself. I opened the leather pouch and took out a pinch of tobacco. I don't know if you can understand me, I said to the empty air. But I'm sorry. I'm sorry for not respecting this place. Sorry for treating it like it was nothing special. I see now what it means. What it is. I scattered the tobacco on the ground. I'll protect it. I swear it. No more hunting camps. No more careless feet walking where they shouldn't. This place will be sacred again, the way it's supposed to be. Nothing happened. The sun kept sinking. The stick figures stayed still. I felt like an idiot, kneeling in the dirt, talking to the air. Then the ground began to shake. The stick figures started moving, all of them at once. They flowed toward the clearing like a wooden river, surrounding me in seconds. I stood up, fighting the urge to run, as they closed in, tighter and tighter. The big one, the 15-foot guardian, stepped forward. It bent down again and once more touched my chest over my heart. This time, the touch was warm. Images filled my mind, but different ones. I saw the clearing protected, roped off, marked as sacred ground. I saw signs explaining what it was, teaching people to respect it. I saw myself, years older, still guarding it, still keeping the promise. The figure pulled back and straightened up. Then slowly, deliberately, it fell apart. The sticks that made up its body separated and dropped to the ground in a neat pile. All around the clearing, the other figures did the same. Hundreds of them, falling apart like puppets with cut strings. In seconds, the wooden army was gone, leaving nothing but piles of ordinary sticks scattered through the forest. I stood there alone in the gathering darkness, my heart pounding, my legs barely holding me up. It was over. They'd accepted my promise. It took 6 months to make it official. The stone circle and the surrounding valley were designated as a protected sacred site under federal law. I worked with Dr. Whitehorse and her tribe to get it done right, proper protocols, proper respect. We put up signs explaining what the place was and why people needed to stay out, not scary warning signs, but educational ones, teaching instead of threatening. 3 hunters died on my mountain that November. A fourth, the camper we never found, is still listed as missing. The official report said it was the work of a disturbed individual who was never caught. The case is still open, though nobody's really looking anymore. Tom Bradley still hunts these mountains, but never on the North Ridge. He knows. He doesn't talk about it, but he knows. I'm 50 now, still working as a ranger, still managing these forests. I check on the sacred clearing every week, making sure it's undisturbed. Sometimes, especially at sunset, I'll find a single stick figure standing near the stone circle. Just one, keeping watch. When I see it, I leave a pinch of tobacco and say a quiet thank you. It never moves while I'm watching, but it's always gone the next time I come back. Last month, a developer from Richmond contacted the Forest Service about building a resort on the North Ridge. The proposal would have required clear-cutting 50 acres right next to the sacred site. I spent 3 hours on the phone explaining very clearly why that would never, ever happen. That night, I drove up to check on the clearing. It was peaceful, quiet, undisturbed. But as I was leaving, I saw something at the edge of my headlights. Stick figures. Just 3 of them, standing beside the trail, watching. They were smaller than before, maybe 5 feet tall. Almost gentle-looking, if wooden constructions could look gentle. As I drove past, I could have sworn they turned their heads to follow me. I'm not scared anymore. We have an understanding now, the forest and me. I protect the sacred places, and the stick Indians leave the rest alone. It's a good arrangement. But every time I train a new ranger, I make sure to tell them about the North Ridge, about respecting the places we don't fully understand. Some of them think I'm superstitious. That's fine. They don't need to believe me. They just need to respect the boundaries. Because I know what happens when you don't. I've seen it. And on quiet nights when the wind moves through the trees just right, I can still hear it. The snap, snap, snap of branches moving where nothing should be able to move at all. The forest remembers. The forest always remembers. And as long as I'm alive, I'll make sure everyone else remembers too.